Chapter 293. Skyrend was the most powerful sect in the southernmost part of the East Sea. In the East Sea, where the Crystal Palace was the most powerful sect, Skyrend was closest to the Northern Alliance, one in the south and the other in the north. Silver Sword Island was one of the three large islands belonging to Sky Fisher Sword sect. It was second only to the sect's base, Jade Sword Island, and the most prosperous island, Gold Sword Island. Among the 5 great sects of the Eastern Sea, Sky Fisher Sword sect was the only one that did not have a large island as its base. Silver Sword Island was located at the southernmost part of Skyrend, closest to the Demon Sea region. It was also the front line of Skyrend's defense against the demon race. On this day, the long-distance teleportation array in the center of Silver Sword Island suddenly lit up. After the silver light dissipated, a young cultivator in his 20s walked out of the teleportation array, much to everyone's surprise. The teleportation formation on Silver Sword Island was very unique. The entire formation was carved into a huge platform, and the formation was divided into 3 concentric circles. The innermost circle was the short-range teleportation formation, which was normally only used by the various islands under the Skysplitter Sword sect's jurisdiction. The middle circle and the smallest circle formed a medium-range teleportation formation, which connected the various powers under the Skysplitter Sword sect's jurisdiction. The long-range teleportation formation was the passageway between the Skysplitter Sword sect and the other sects of the Eastern Sea. Why are there more and more foreign cultivators lately? Exactly. I don't know how many times this long-distance teleportation array has lit up in the past few months, but there are also many people coming from the sea. The number of foreign cultivators on Silver Sword Island has been increasing lately. As soon as Lu Ping stepped out of the teleportation array, the discussions of the cultivators around him naturally didn't escape his ears. He frowned. His instincts told him that something had happened, so he looked outside the teleportation array and found an early-stage blood condensation cultivator. He tossed a storage pouch over and said, "You're a cultivator guide for Silver Sword Island, right? Follow me for now. This is your first time here, so there are many places you're not familiar with." This blood condensation cultivator was originally the leader of a group of tour guides. Usually, he would guide newcomers to Silver Sword Island. Normally, he wouldn't have to do such things himself. But when Lu Ping threw him an interspatial pouch and asked him to lead the way, the cultivator was about to refuse. But when he subconsciously scanned the interspatial pouch with his divine sense, he was stunned. Then, he pretended to sweep his divine sense across the young cultivator in front of him and was shocked. His divine sense swept across the young cultivator's body, but it was as if he was a clay ox that disappeared into the sea. There was no response at all. "As you wish, Senior." Seeing the faint smile on Lu Ping's face, the blood condensation cultivator broke out in a cold sweat. Under the confused gazes of the surrounding minor repairs cultivators, the blood condensation cultivator respectfully led Lu Ping towards the center of Silver Sword Island. "Why did Brother Stone come out personally today?" "Yeah, didn't Brother Stone quit being a cultivator guide?" Last time, a peak blood condensation cultivator asked Brother Stone for help, but he didn't even respond. "Yeah, our cultivator guide might be weak, but he has Skyrend behind him." "How did Brother Stone come out so easily this time?" "Didn't you see that person give Brother Stone a storage pouch? There must be at least 500 spirit stones in it. Otherwise, Brother Stone wouldn't be bowing to him. I think that person must be some big shot. Brother Stone is in a hurry to curry favor with him." Amidst the commotion, the teleportation array lit up again. A few cultivators appeared on the teleportation platform, and the noisy minor repairs cultivators immediately quietened down. Business had arrived. So, the large number of cultivators coming to Silver Sword Island happened 3 months ago after the Crystal Palace cultivators had a conflict with Skyrend's patrolling cultivators? Lu Ping asked thoughtfully. Brother Stone walked beside Lu Ping, half a body length behind. "That's right. At that time, Skyrend's patrolling cultivators discovered traces of a suspicious cultivator in the ocean, so they started tracking him. In the end, they discovered a group of Crystal Palace cultivators doing some shady business in the ocean. After their tracks were exposed, the Crystal Palace cultivators tried to silence Skyren's patrolling cultivators. Silence them? Lu Ping smiled and said, that's quite similar to the overbearing style of Crystal Palace. When Brother Stone heard Lu Ping's words, the cautious look on his face immediately disappeared. How could Lu Ping not notice the change in Brother Stone's expression? Lu Ping knew that these cultivators were usually the most well-informed. While providing information to foreign cultivators, they were also the eyes and ears of the local forces. Lu Ping did not think too much about it. Brother Stone continued, that's right. However, the Crystal Palace cultivators did not expect that after Skyren's patrolling cultivators discovered traces of the suspicious cultivator, they realized that the intruder was very powerful. They had already notified Skyren's high-ranking cultivators beforehand. When the Crystal Palace cultivators were massacring Skyren's cultivators, Skyren's high-ranking cultivators rushed over and joined the battle. Thus, the conflict between the two sides erupted. What were the casualties on both sides? Brother Stone said honestly, I don't know. Both sides blocked the news. However, it is said that the Crystal Palace discovered a treasure in the outer seas of Silver Sword Island and wanted to monopolize it. However, Skyren caught them red-handed. After a fierce battle, they realized that the gains did not make up for the losses. Thus, they agreed to divide the treasure equally. However, they did not expect the news to spread, and the more bizarre it became, the more cultivators from the East Sea came to Silver Sword Island. Lu Ping naturally knew that the matter was not as simple as it seemed. The strangest thing was that the suspicious cultivator who led Skyren's patrolling cultivators to the outer seas and encountered the Crystal Palace cultivators. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the mysterious cultivator had deliberately exposed the traces of the Crystal Palace. In the end, the two sides suppressed the conflict. They probably realized that they had fallen into someone else's trap. The news that the Crystal Palace had discovered a treasure in the outer seas of Silver Sword Island and clashed with Skyren was probably leaked by this person. For no reason, Lu Ping connected Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng, who had come to Silver Sword Island 2 years ago, to the cultivator who had schemed against the two sections. Brother Stone brought Lu Ping around Silver Sword Island for 2 days. Not only did he visit all the shops on the island, but he also gave Lu Ping a detailed introduction of the surrounding seas. Brother Stone might only be an early blood condensation cultivator, but he knew the surrounding seas like the back of his hand. He even knew a thing or two about the outer seas. The outer seas of the Silver Sword Island were equivalent to the buffer zone of the North Sea. Without the sea restriction, it was impossible for someone of Stone's cultivation to reach the outer seas. As such, someone must have informed him of the situation in the outer seas. One day, they arrived at the entrance of a cultivator's inn. Lu Ping suddenly stopped and said, "All right, you've done well for the past 2 days. This is your reward. Go back and cultivate well." Brother Stone wasn't surprised. He'd clearly seen this kind of thing many times. He tightly grasped the 2 jade bottles Lu Ping threw to him, thanked Lu Ping, and left in a hurry. Seeing Brother Stone leave, Lu Ping shook his head with a smile. He seemed to see the shadow of himself in these cultivators when he was still in the blood condensation and blood refining realms. Therefore, Lu Ping always helped them subconsciously. Little Air on Autumn Cloud Island, Little Sima on Sanjia Island, and now Brother Stone was the same. Lu Ping mocked himself. Then, he discreetly glanced at a mark outside the inn's door that looked like it had been knocked over. He then walked straight in. "Kid, you've really broken through to the core forging realm, and you've reached such a level?" Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng looked like he'd seen a ghost when he saw Lu Ping. Lu Ping was stunned when he saw a female cultivator in the core forging realm in the living room. It turned out that this person was the one Lu Ping saw at Li Xiuzhu's apprenticeship ceremony in the listening courtyard. She was the first person sitting below Enlightened Plum, but she claimed to be Enlightened Plum's second disciple. Lu Ping smiled. Martial uncle, there's no need to make such a fuss. I reached the peak of the blood condensation realm 2 years ago. It's not surprising that I broke through to the core forging realm in 2 years. Martial uncle, you should introduce me to this fellow Taoist. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng only mentioned Lu Ping casually when he met him. He didn't think that Lu Ping could really reach such a realm. But now, not only did Lu Ping break through to the core forging realm in just 2 years, what shocked him even more was that Lu Ping's true essence fluctuation had obviously reached the peak of the first level of the core forging realm, and he could step into the second level at any time. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng originally wanted to put on the airs of an uncle master and warn Lu Ping not to damage his foundation because of greed, but he found that Lu Ping's aura was overflowing, and it was obvious that his foundation was extremely deep. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng was stunned when he heard Lu Ping's question. He looked back and didn't answer for a moment. It was the woman in the living room who walked out and smiled. Isn't this the famous pill master Lu Jiu? You even attended my 6th junior sister's apprenticeship ceremony. How can you not know me? Lu Ping smiled and explained, I was invited in a hurry. Although I've seen you before, I don't know how to address you. The woman bowed and said, I'm Enlightened Master Mei's second disciple, Zhu Xianmeng. Do you know me now? Lu Ping heard the word Xianmeng in Zhu Xuanmeng's name and turned to look at Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng. He saw that Enlightened Master Liang was looking at the two of them in shock, so he returned the greeting. Greetings, fellow Zhu. Liang Xianfeng finally came back to his senses. He waved his hand in amusement and said, all right. There's no need to be so polite. Both of you call me Uncle Master, so you're both my juniors. Just address each other as senior sister and junior brother. Lu Ping's intuition told him that this Uncle Master seemed to be hiding something. He was trying his best to hide a strange expression on his face, but he knew that this Uncle Master would never harm him. Anyway, the woman in front of him was definitely older and stronger than him. He wouldn't lose out if he called her senior sister out of respect for his Uncle Master. Thus, he said, Greetings, Senior Sister Zhu. The reason why Lu Ping called her Senior Sister Zhu instead of Senior Sister Xianmeng was because disciples of the same sect could only address each other by name. Zhu Xianmeng seemed to be deep in thought at this moment, but she still nodded and said, Greetings, Junior Brother Lu. What the two of them didn't see was that a strange smile flashed across Enlightened Master Liang Xuanfeng's eyes from time to time. Chapter 294. Uncle Master, who is this person? After exchanging greetings with Zhu Xianmeng, Lu Ping immediately asked Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng secretly. Uncle Master, is this alchemy master Lu Jiu with you too? Just as Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng was thinking about how to answer Lu Ping's question, Zhu Xianmeng also secretly transmitted her voice to him. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng felt a headache coming on. He really wanted to make things clear and end things once and for all, but when he thought of the two terrifying cultivators, a chill ran down his spine and he almost shivered in fear of embarrassing himself in front of the two juniors. So, he said, Come. Since the two of you are here to help me, then let's discuss how to make the situation even more chaotic and take a share of the spoils from Sky Fisher Sword Sect and the Crystal Palace. In that case, the strange cultivator who caused the fight between Skyrend and the Crystal Palace cultivators was you, Uncle Master. Impressive indeed. There was a hint of excitement in the corner of Lu Ping's eyes. Clearly, perfected Liang Xuanfeng's move was very admirable to Lu Ping. Seeing Lu Ping's expression, Liang Xianfeng said proudly, That's right. Lu Ping asked, Martial uncle, what is there? Is it really as the outsiders say? Is it really a treasure trove or an ancient cultivator's ruin? Perfected Liang Xianfeng pondered for a moment and said, Have you heard of Laozu Zhongshuan? Both Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng were shocked. Zhu Xianmeng said, Is it the remnant of Fei Ling sect who was known as the #1 weapon refinement grandmaster in the North Sea, Laozu Zhongshuan? Lu Ping looked at Zhu Xianmeng in surprise. He did not expect her to be so familiar with the matters of the North Sea. That deepened Lu Ping's suspicion towards Perfected Plum. However, Lu Ping could tell that Perfected Liang Xianfeng had something to hide, so he did not ask further. Could this Taoist plum be a Tao companion that martial uncle Liang Xianfeng found in the East Sea? A thought suddenly flashed across Lu Ping's mind, but he immediately rejected it. He had never heard that Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng had a Tao companion in the sect, so there was no need for Uncle Master Liang to hide it in front of him. Would Uncle Master Liang be embarrassed to let the sect know that he had a Tao companion outside? Lu Ping shook his head and tossed that ridiculous thought out of his mind. Perfected Liang Xianfeng continued, back then, when Fei Ling's sect was destroyed, Zhongshuan Laozu escaped and hid in the East Ocean. He appeared in the southern part of the East Ocean and refined Dharma weapons and Dharma treasures for many cultivators in the East Ocean, creating a great reputation for himself. Lu Ping was puzzled. Zhongshuan Laozu is so ostentatious, isn't he afraid that the cultivators of the North Sea will come after him? Perfected Liang Xianfeng answered, Zhongshuan Laozu originally wanted to gather the old subordinates of Fei Ling sect, nurture talents, continue Fei Ling sect's legacy, and wait for an opportunity to make a comeback and restore Fei Ling sect's former prestige. Unfortunately, Zhongshuan Laozu is a top-notch genius in the cultivation world when it comes to refining Dharma weapons, but he's a complete layman when it comes to reorganizing a scattered sect and restoring morale. For decades, Zhongshuan Laozu accomplished nothing and even attracted the pursuit of various sects in the North Sea. Zhongshuan Laozu finally realized that he couldn't restore Fei Ling's sect with his own ability. Not only did the disheartened Zhongshuan Laozu not become depressed, but he became even crazier. He refined high-quality Dharma treasures in the East Ocean on a large scale, attracting a large number of cultivators from the East Ocean. However, he made a condition: any cultivator or sect that wants him to refine Dharma weapons must send him a certain number of cultivators from various sects in the North Sea depending on the quality of the Dharma weapons and Dharma weapons. Lu Ping sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "That's a vicious move." Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded and said, "For a while, a large number of cultivators from various sects in the North Sea went missing. By the time the sects in the North Sea understood the whole story, more than 30 core forging cultivators had been killed by East Ocean cultivators. However, East Ocean's cultivation world is far more powerful than North Sea's. The cultivators who attacked North Sea cultivators all did it secretly in their own names, so the sects in the North Sea had no way to investigate. In the end, the sects could only send a few Laozu to investigate openly and secretly in the East Ocean. Finally, they tracked down Zhongshuan Laozu. After a battle, Zhongshuan Laozu was ambushed and killed, but his hiding place in the East Ocean was not discovered by Laozu, and he has been hiding ever since. Lu Ping frowned and said, "Then how did the Crystal Palace discover Zhongshuan Laozu's secret abode in the East Ocean?" "It's the Overflowing Sea faction." "The Overflowing Sea gang?" Lu Ping's frown deepened. How did they find clues about Zhongshuan Laozu's cave abode in the East Ocean in the North Sea? Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded and said with a serious expression, "The Overflowing Sea gang has been relying on the Crystal Palace to plunder all kinds of cultivation resources in the North Sea. Because of the Crystal Palace's influence, the higher-ups of the sects in the North Sea did not want to have a direct conflict with the Crystal Palace, so they just let the Overflowing Sea gang operate in the North Sea. I didn't expect them to find clues about Zhongshuan Laozu's secret abode in the East Ocean." Perfected Liang Xianfeng saw that Lu Ping was still confused, so he continued, "Speaking of clues, it has something to do with Fei Ling Island that you've been to before." Lu Ping asked curiously, "Could it be that someone found clues in Fei Ling Island and the Overflowing Sea gang found out?" "That's roughly it." Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded and said, "The Overflowing Sea gang found out from the jade scrolls that they obtained from Fei Ling Island that when Zhongshuan Laozu's cultivation base was not complete, he traveled in the East Ocean and built a secret abode in the East Ocean. This secret abode was in the area where Zhongshuan Laozu often appeared after he went into exile in the East Ocean. Therefore, this secret abode is most likely the hiding place that Zhongshuan Laozu built later on." After understanding the gist of the matter, Lu Ping smiled and flattered, "Martial uncle, you're so capable. You actually got the information from the overflowing sea gang and ruined the Crystal Palace's plan to monopolize the abode. Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled proudly and said, although I, the Zhenling sect, am not as brazen as the Crystal Palace in expanding our forces everywhere, we naturally have our own sources of information. Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said solemnly, what kind of spiritual item did Martial Uncle obtain this time? Lu Ping knew that the Sky-Splitting sect and the Crystal Palace were not the only two sects that had their eyes on Zhongshuan's abode. Now that the situation had become chaotic, the two sects definitely did not dare to take the risk of offending the entire East Ocean cultivators and monopolizing Zhongshuan's abode. However, the two sects would definitely take the majority of the loot. The rest of the loot would depend on their own abilities. Although Perfected Liang Xianfeng came prepared and even toyed with the two sects in the palm of his hand, that was only for a moment. With just the three of them here, it was impossible for them to compete with the vast number of East Ocean cultivators. They could only fish in troubled waters. When Perfected Liang Xianfeng heard this, his previously proud expression turned serious and he said in a serious tone, in the past, Zhongshuan Laozu's name for crafting weapons was known throughout the world. He relied on 4 treasures. One was a crafting furnace, a high-tier treasure called the Chongxian furnace. Another was a high-tier earth-level spiritual fire of heaven and earth, the Ziyuan fire. Another was a low-tier earth-level spiritual water of heaven and earth used for quenching fire, the Xianyuan heavy water. The last one was a low-tier earth-level spiritual object of heaven and earth used to strengthen the power of fire, the Skywind leaf. Perfected Liang Xianfeng paused for a moment, then said with a somewhat feverish expression, what I want this time is this Skywind leaf. With this Skywind leaf, I will be able to reach the 7th grade forging core and break through to the Dharma stage. I might even be able to enter the mid-Dharma stage or even the late Dharma stage. Zhu Xianmeng and Lu Ping looked at each other and waited for Perfected Liang Xianfeng to calm down before asking, Uncle Master, how can we find the Skywind leaf first when the cave opens? Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled and said, don't worry, I won't get involved if I'm not confident. I've learned a small magical power that is very effective in finding wind elemental spiritual objects. When the time comes, I'll definitely be able to find the Skywind leaf first. Of course, although Zhongshuan Laozu is only at the mid-Dharma stage, he has made countless weapons and collected many rare treasures. He might even have brought out part of the legacy of the failing sect. Otherwise, he wouldn't have planned to restore the failing sect back then. When the time comes, how much you can get will depend on your luck. What Lu Ping was most afraid of was that after the crowd of cultivators rushed into the cave, they would be blindly searching for it. That way, it would all depend on luck. If they found it, they might even be surrounded by other cultivators. Now that he heard that Perfected Liang Xianfeng already had a plan, he heaved a sigh of relief. When he heard Perfected Liang Xianfeng mention that Zhongshuan Laozu might have the legacy of the failing sect, he was tempted, but then he asked curiously, Uncle Master, since Zhongshuan Laozu's 4 treasures are all used to make weapons, then aren't they all together? If we find the Skywind leaf, then the other 3 treasures. Zhu Xuanmeng's eyes lit up. Liang Xianfeng pointed at Lu Ping and laughed, saying, I knew you would think that way. No wonder, Master, yes. He recommended you to your master. Lu Ping was puzzled, are the 4 treasures not together? Perfected Liang Xianfeng stopped laughing and said, today, I'll broaden your horizons. Heaven and earth spiritual objects are nurtured by nature, the most important thing is the spirituality contained in them. It's a taboo for them to be too close to each other. It might be fine for a short period of time, but as time passes, the spirituality of the two will fight with each other and try to devour each other to strengthen themselves. The higher the grade of the spiritual objects, the further apart they will be from each other. Zhongshuan Laozu's 4 treasures contain 3 high-grade heaven and earth spiritual objects, it's impossible for them to be placed together. Lu Ping never knew such a situation existed. Fortunately, the indigo spiritual fire was in his storage ring, the psychic wood was with the peach tree spirit, and the soul-nurturing wood was almost placed with the peach tree spirit by Lu Ping. Fortunately, Lu Ping had another use for the soul-nurturing wood, so he didn't want to part with it. The nameless spiritual water was also in the 1000-bell millet, not too far from the peach tree spirit. Lu Ping stood quietly at the side. Liang Xianfeng and Zhu Xianmeng didn't know that this cultivator who had just broken through to the core forging stage had 4 heaven and earth spiritual objects. Chapter 295. A few days later, in the sea thousands of miles away from Silver Sword Island, a small white boat appeared in the sky. Liang Xianfeng, Zhu Xianmeng, and Lu Ping stood on the boat. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng waved his hand and the boat disappeared into the air. Zhu Xianmeng looked fondly at Liang Xuanfeng's boat and said, "Uncle Master, your boat is truly fast. It only takes the time to finish a cup of tea to get here from Silver Sword Island." Liang Xianfeng flaunted, "That's true. Although this cloud stream boat isn't my natal artifact, it has condensed 6 Tao talismans. It's considered one of the fastest flying artifacts in the cultivation world." With his divine sense, Lu Ping could clearly sense that there were hundreds of core forging realm cultivators and even more blood condensation realm cultivators hiding in the void around him. These cultivators had varying levels of cultivation, and their invisibility techniques were strong or weak. However, without exception, none of them seemed to be deliberately hiding their presence. Lu Ping said curiously, "These cultivators are quite strange. Since no one is deliberately hiding their tracks, wouldn't it be better to meet face to face? In this way, wouldn't it be like burying one's head in the sand?" Liang Xianfeng said, "It's not to hide our tracks, but to hide our identities." Lu Ping suddenly understood. In the process of exploring ruins like this, everyone had to be on guard against sneak attacks. Therefore, the important thing was not whether you would be discovered when you made a move, but whether you would be recognized after the sneak attack. The former could be avoided at most, but when they met again in the future, no one would be able to recognize each other. The latter was a life and death feud that would not end until one of them died. At this moment, a rumbling sound came from the depths of the sea, and the seawater on the surface of the sea suddenly vibrated. Liang Xianfeng said seriously, "Attention, the Crystal Palace and Skyrend have joined hands to open the Mansion of Profound Mystery. It's much earlier than I expected. It seems that it's right to come here 2 hours earlier today. Otherwise, we will have to eat the leftovers of others." When Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng heard perfected Liang Xuanfeng's words, they felt that this uncle master was being too careless. Through the past 2 days of interaction, Lu Ping had already realized that although this uncle master was cautious, he was an extremely easy person to get along with. Hence, he said, "Uncle master, you're being too careless. How can you rush back and forth for such a matter?" Liang Xianfeng glared at Lu Ping and pretended to be older. "Kid, what do you know? Do you know what your martial uncle is best at?" Before Lu Ping could ask, perfected Liang Xianfeng had already said ostentatiously, "Restrictions. All kinds of formations and restrictions in the ruins. Of course, it's not to set them up, but to dismantle them. According to my deduction of the Crystal Palace and Skyren's speed in breaking the restrictions, the cave will open 2 hours after we arrive. 2 hours is enough for us to prepare. Why is it earlier now?" Zhu Xianmeng also found it funny and joked with Liang Xianfeng. "This is what I'm most worried about. It seems that the Crystal Palace and Skyrend have joined hands." Hearing this, Zhu Xuanmeng's face turned gloomy like perfected Liang Xianfeng. Lu Ping thought for a while and said, "Martial uncle also said that the Crystal Palace has been collecting information about Fei Ling's sect through the overflowing ocean gang. Perhaps the Crystal Palace happened to have some jade slips that recorded the restrictions that Laozu had set up in the cave." Reverend Liang Xianfeng did not answer, but his complexion was much better. If the Crystal Palace and the Sky Fisher Sword sect had truly joined forces to take over the profound abode of abode, the Crystal Palace would naturally have nothing to fear as they were the only major force in the Eastern Sea. The Sky Fisher Sword sect would not be able to withstand the denunciations of the Eastern Sea cultivators. Even the other three major sects would be wary of the alliance between the Crystal Palace and the Sky Fisher Sword sect. Suddenly, two huge whirlpools formed on the surface of the sea. Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's face lit up. The two sects really did not join hands. Let's go, we're already one step behind them. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng steered the flowing cloud warship toward one of the whirlpools and plunged into the sea. Lu Ping's divine sense told him that the hundreds of cultivators had split into two groups and were rushing toward the two whirlpools. Liang Xianfeng had the flowing cloud boat in his hand, and he cultivated a wind-attributed cultivation technique, so in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the group. At this moment, the three of them suddenly became the target of everyone. Immediately, several attacks were launched at the flowing cloud boat, intending to slow down the three of them. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng guarded the two sides while perfected Liang Xianfeng controlled the flying boat. Under the speed of lightning, the distance between them and the cultivators widened. Lu Ping stood on the port side of the flowing cloud boat. Lu Ping couldn't help but feel a little excited when a flying sword shot towards him. This was the first time he made a move since advancing to the core forging realm. Moreover, he was facing a chaotic battle or even a siege by perfected cultivators. Lu Ping formed a sword art and the golden scale sword shot out from Lu Ping's right fingertip. 96 sword shadows struck the flying sword and sent it swaying towards the sea. A painful roar came from the void. Clearly, Lu Ping's sword had injured the opponent's magic artifact. On the other side, Zhu Xianmeng was actually holding a pipa in her hand. Amidst the noise, the attacks flying towards the starboard side were shaken and shattered by the void. Although perfected Liang Xianfeng had been controlling the flowing cloud boat with all his strength, he was secretly preparing to make a move in case he encountered an expert. He wasn't too worried about Zhu Xianmeng. After all, Zhu Xuanmeng's cultivation was at the mid-stage of the core forging realm. However, Lu Ping's performance really surprised perfected Liang Xianfeng. Perfected Liang Xianfeng originally thought that Lu Ping would not be able to fight the enemy as he had just advanced to the core forging realm and was a pill refiner. However, perfected Liang Xianfeng sensed that the cultivator whose magic artifact was damaged by Lu Ping's attack was a cultivator with the same cultivation level as Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping had the advantage of a magic artifact, it was difficult for him to find a match among cultivators of the same cultivation level with just one attack. Perfected Liang Xianfeng narrowed his eyes when he saw the golden scale sword in Lu Ping's hand. He chuckled and said, "So that big fish, Jin Li, died in your hands?" Lu Ping was shocked, but he immediately reacted and said with a smile, "That's right. That guy was besieged and was on his last breath when he escaped. I took advantage of him." Perfected Liang Xianfeng said with a smirk, "That monster from Golden Wyrm Island is already furious. He was going to the East Sea to start a massacre. Don't let him see the sword in your hand." Lu Ping split his sword into 3 true essence 1 chi swords made of psychic sword rays and blocked the 3 magic artifacts that were flying over. He said, "Uncle Master, what do you think of this technique?" The 3 true essence 1 chi swords were formed by 81 psychic sword rays each. Perfected Liang Xianfeng nodded as he watched, but he said, "It's best not to use this technique in front of him." The spirit chi in the air changed and a giant claw tore through the air as if it wanted to grab the flowing cloud boat completely. Perfected Liang Xianfeng wanted to see how far Lu Ping could go, so he only warned, "Be careful, it's a demonic cultivator." Lu Ping pointed at the sword with one hand and the seawater with the other and shouted, "Rise." A 90-foot-long psychic sword dragon with a single horn became even more lively after being covered by the seawater. After the giant claw was entangled by the sword dragon, it tore at its head and bit at its body. Although the giant claw tore off many of its sword scales, a mournful wail came from the void after a while. The giant claw was already crushed by the sword dragon. The sword dragon was also covered in wounds, but it was still swaggering in the sky. After Lu Ping destroyed the giant claw, no cultivators on the port side came to attack for a while. Perfected Liang Xianfeng was shocked. The demonic cultivator's cultivation was at the third stage core forging realm, but Lu Ping easily broke his technique. Humph. A cold snort came from the void. Since you're so powerful, maybe the old man will have to use his divine sense. After the cold snort, Lu Ping felt a strange attack coming from the void towards Lu Ping's divine sense. Divine sense attack. Lu Ping smiled slightly. Although he didn't know any secret techniques to attack with divine sense, his divine sense was no weaker than a mid-stage core forging realm cultivator. This kind of attack was nothing in Lu Ping's eyes. Lu Ping searched with his divine sense. After the other party's attack stabbed into Lu Ping's divine sense, Lu Ping only felt a slight numbness in his divine sense. The other party's attack was bounced back by Lu Ping. Liang Xianfeng sneered and said, "Didn't you already make your move? You didn't forget to remind me after the attack. What a good move." Liang Xianfeng deliberately said that he reminded him after the attack. Naturally, he wanted to expose the sneak attack. The other party snorted and no longer answered. A cloud of fire swept towards the flowing cloud boat. Lu Ping's face froze. This was obviously a mid-stage core forging realm master. Although there were many people who tried to stop Lu Ping during the battle, his opponents were all early-stage core forging realm cultivators. There were only 3 of them. This was a hidden rule in the East China Sea's cultivation world. Now, a mid-stage core forging realm cultivator not only tried to interfere but also launched a sneak attack. Liang Xianfeng pointed this out to warn the other party. The other party broke the rule first. With Liang Xianfeng, an 8th stage core forging realm master behind him, Lu Ping had nothing to worry about. Lu Ping's eyes were filled with excitement to be able to fight with a mid-stage core forging realm master. Lu Ping had a great advantage when fighting with a fire attribute cultivator on the sea. Lu Ping immediately sheathed the golden scale sword and clasped his hands together. The water vapor in a radius of a few miles immediately gathered above Lu Ping's head. Before the fiery clouds could reach him, a huge dark cloud had already formed above them. The enemy cultivator obviously sensed something was amiss and sped up his casting speed. Lu Ping smirked and shouted, "Quick! Art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain." The torrential rain poured down and enveloped a huge fiery cloud. Sizzling sounds could be heard from the fiery cloud. Occasionally, there would be explosive sounds. The fiery cloud gradually turned into a gray cloud that was about to be extinguished. The cultivator who cast the fire cloud did his best to control the cloud of fire to dodge, but the dark cloud in the sky became thicker and thicker. No matter how the cloud of fire moved, it couldn't escape the control of Lu Ping's art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain. The sea was getting closer and closer. Seeing that the boat was about to plunge into the sea, Liang Xianfeng laughed loudly. At this time, someone shouted in the sky again, "Your Excellency is too arrogant. Eat my attack." Chapter 296. The roar wasn't aimed at Lu Ping, but the laughing enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng. And as soon as the roaring man attacked, Lu Ping knew he couldn't handle a battle of this level. A late-stage core forging perfected master. A strange chill hit them in the face, and the surface of the sea below the flowing cloud ship immediately turned into ice. At the same time, the flowing cloud ship's body was also covered in a dense layer of frost. The flowing cloud ship's speed instantly dropped. Suddenly, Lu Ping heard a buzzing sound in his head. The dark clouds that were controlled by his art of moving clouds and summoning rain suddenly broke free from his control. The entire dark cloud shrouded the sky above the flowing cloud skiff, and hail the size of goose eggs rained down on the 3 people on the skiff. At the same time, the entire dark cloud suddenly collapsed towards the center, and the surrounding clouds quickly shrunk towards the center of the collapse. When the entire dark cloud disappeared, a huge ice cone that was dozens of feet long hovered above the skiff and smashed down towards the skiff. Perfected Liang Xianfeng stopped laughing and his expression turned solemn. Unknowingly, a long sword had already flown towards the ice all. However, the 3-foot-long flying sword seemed extremely tiny in front of the ice all that was hundreds of feet long. Lu Ping looked at the flying sword and sighed. Lu Ping knew that perfected Liang Xuanfeng's natal artifact wasn't a flying sword, and this flying sword was obviously a magical artifact. Moreover, the quality of this flying sword was higher than the golden scale sword. Split! Perfected Liang Xianfeng shouted, and the flying sword immediately split into 18 swords in the sky. As he performed a series of dazzling sword techniques, each of the 18 flying swords in the sky displayed a set of sword techniques. Qingfeng sword, cold wind sword, zephyr sword, howling wind sword, whirlwind sword, stormwind sword. Lu Ping was dumbfounded. This was Xianling sect's famous, merry 18 swords. Furthermore, each of perfected Liang Xuanfeng's 18 swords were made up of 72 spiritual sword flashes. Altogether, there were a total of 1,296 spiritual sword flashes, the highest realm of spiritual sword flashes. The ice spikes in the sky immediately crumbled under the combined attack of the 18 swords. Reverend Liang Xianfeng pointed his left hand downwards and the 18 swords split into 2. 9 of them continued to swim in the sky, preventing the other cultivators from launching another sneak attack. The other 8 swords formed a huge wind drill and broke a hole in the ice on the surface of the sea. The flowing cloud boat followed closely behind and disappeared into the sea. The moment the drifting cloud boat entered the sea, Lu Ping formed 9 seals in a row. "Kid, you have quite a few tricks up your sleeve." Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled. Lu Ping curled his lips and said, "How can I compare to Uncle Master? You've even mastered Xianling sect's signature sword technique to such a high level. I'm afraid Xianling sect will have to take the blame for you, martial uncle." Perfected Liang Xianfeng didn't think much of it. "Only Xianling sect. I don't care if other sects want to take the blame." Lu Ping chuckled. "Hee hee. You're a genius, martial uncle. Of course you have high standards. But Uncle Master, can you teach me this sword technique?" "Why? You want Xianling sect to take the blame too?" asked perfected Liang Xianfeng with a faint smile. "Of course I won't miss the chance." Lu Ping smiled. At Lu Ping's level of swordsmanship, it was extremely difficult to make any progress. Only by studying the sword techniques of hundreds of schools, absorbing their essence and making up for their weaknesses, would one be able to master swordsmanship. Perfected Liang Xianfeng knew what Lu Ping was thinking, so he promised to teach him the 18 merry swords after they came out of Zhong Xian's cave. Following closely behind Lu Ping's group, the other core forging masters also rushed into the whirlpool. But the moment the 2 Dharma treasures entered the water, they felt as if the water around them had come alive. Dozens of undercurrents grabbed the 2 Dharma treasures like dozens of arms. By the time the Dharma treasures broke free, they were already a step behind Lu Ping's group and were overtaken by the people behind them. At the bottom of the sea, a huge light shield covered a mysterious cave abode. This was where Zhongxian Laozu's cave abode was located. From afar, there were 2 huge holes in the shield, one in the north and one in the south. Obviously, the holes were left by Skyrend and the Crystal Palace's attacks. When the 3 of them got closer, perfected Liang Xianfeng went up to take a look and said, "We're not very lucky. This is the shield of the Crystal Palace." At this moment, the 3 of them did not have the time to lament about who they would encounter. Although the Crystal Palace cultivators had broken the barrier here, they naturally would not allow the cultivators behind them to take the shortcut. They had already resealed the broken barrier. Of course, in a hurry, the seal was far inferior to Zhongxian Laozu's shield. Perfected Liang Xianfeng changed 3 sets of hand seals in a row. When the 3rd set of hand seals was cast, the light of the sealed shield dimmed. Reverend Liang Xuanfeng's face lit up. He performed another hand seal and the seal immediately dissipated. The 3 of them hastily walked in. By then, the cultivators behind them had already caught up. Reverend Liang Xianfeng snickered and performed the third set of hand seals. This time, however, he performed it in reverse. The seal from before appeared on the barrier once more, sealing it up. As soon as the three of them entered, they felt a strong spiritual force. The concentration of spiritual qi is more than one medium spiritual vein, right? Zhu Xianmeng said in surprise. It seems that Zhong Xian Laozu's management was quite successful. Perfected Liang Xianfeng said, of course. After all, Zhong Xian Laozu planned to restore the sect back then. Without some foundation, how would he dare to make such a bold statement? Ignoring the cultivator's curses, the three of them hurriedly disappeared into the shield. After walking for a while, perfected Liang Xianfeng suddenly stopped and said, no, the Crystal Palace is obviously going for the refinery room of Zhong Xian's cave abode. Zhong Xian Laozu's refinery furnace and the purple fire must be in the refinery room, so the sky wind leaf must not be in the same place as the purple fire. Moreover, the Crystal Palace isn't that stupid. They have the advantage in numbers, so they must have set up an ambush ahead to buy time for our sect to fight for the treasure. We need to open another path. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng nodded in agreement. Zhu Xianmeng said, Uncle Master, don't you have the magical power to detect the location of the sky wind leaf? You can check it out now. Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, there are many restrictions here. My magical power will only be effective within a certain range. We are only at the periphery of the cave abode. My magical power will only be effective inside the cave abode. Let's choose a random path and try our luck. We are not too late, so there will definitely be some gains. It just depends on the size. Lu Ping reached out and grabbed. De Bail, who was sleeping in the spiritual beast bag, suddenly felt the skin on his neck tighten. When he opened his eyes, he was already in a strange place. The two of them looked at the fat rat in Lu Ping's hand in shock. Lu Ping didn't explain and directly ordered De Bail, choose a path for us. De Bail, who was already at the fifth layer of the blood condensation realm, lowered his head and ran towards the path opened by the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping grabbed his beard and scolded, idiot, not this one. De Bail squeaked a few times in futile protest. Only then did he sniff the ground and walk towards a corridor on the left. Liang Xianfeng chuckled and followed behind Lu Ping. Zhu Xianmeng looked at Lu Ping in surprise and followed behind as well. De Bao had just taken a step towards the entrance of the corridor when he seemed to have collided with an invisible wall, causing him to squeak in pain. Perfected Liang Xianfeng went forward and struck a few hand seals, causing ripples to appear at the entrance of the corridor before it calmed down again. Liang Xianfeng frowned and said, these restrictions are a little troublesome. It's not hard to break, but it will take a lot of time. I'm afraid the people behind will catch up. Zhu Xianmeng pondered and said, should we use spells to attack it or choose another path? Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, the restrictions here are connected to the entire cave abode's formation. If we use force to break it, we will probably trigger a response from the entire formation. It will be even more difficult to break it. The other paths will be the same. For a moment, the three of them seemed to be at a loss. Lu Ping thought for a while and looked at the invisible barrier at the corridor. A strange light actually appeared in his eyes. Lu Ping's actions naturally could not be hidden from Liang Xianfeng. A trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, but he did not disturb Lu Ping. Instead, he quietly watched Lu Ping's next step. Zhu Xianmeng looked at Lu Ping. Which Uncle Master was this person's disciple? She felt that she could not see through this person anymore. Spiritual clarity eyes. This was the first stage of the minor technique, the three pure one's true pupils. Using the method Hu Lili taught him, Lu Ping used half of the clear spirit water given to him by the Dark Mountain Gang master, Qiao Zhengyan, to cleanse his eyes. It took him half a year to complete the first stage of the three pure one's true pupils. As for the remaining half of the clear spirit water, Lu Ping naturally left it to Hu Lili. Right now, Lu Ping's spiritual clarity eyes was still very shallow. He could see through some ordinary illusionary formations and bewildering formations, but he was still far from being able to see through these complicated formations. However, Lu Ping soon discovered that he was extremely familiar with the complex array formations and restrictions. Lu Ping turned around and looked at the two people behind him with a strange expression. Then, he stretched out his hand and made a few strange hand seals. As Lu Ping poured out a large amount of true essence, the ripples of the restrictions in front of them reappeared in front of the three of them. Then, with a shake, it was broken. The three of them quickly passed through the broken light curtain. Lu Ping turned around and made a few more hand seals. The previous ripples of the restrictions reappeared and sealed the corridor again. Looking at the two people's surprised eyes, Lu Ping shrugged and said, "I have also been to Fei Ling Island. These restrictions are recorded in the inheritance jade slips that I obtained." As soon as the three of them left through the corridor, a few cultivators caught up from behind. However, Liang Xianfeng and the other two people were nowhere to be seen. The leading cultivator said doubtfully, "Strange, where did the three people in front go? Are they stupid enough to go to the Crystal Palace's ambush?" Chapter 297. As the three of them moved forward, they encountered several restrictions and obstacles along the way. After Lu Ping pondered for a moment, he made a few hand seals in a row, and the restrictions immediately disappeared. After the three of them passed, Lu Ping made a few more hand seals, and the dissipated restrictions were restored again. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng looked at the hand seals that Lu Ping made previously, which were rather jerky and difficult. Obviously, it was also Lu Ping's first time using it. As they encountered more and more restrictions, Lu Ping became more and more skilled. The restrictions and obstacles they encountered were different, and Lu Ping also used different hand seals to break them. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng finally couldn't help but ask, "Kid, how many failing sect inheritance jade slips about restrictions did you get?" "Along the way, we encountered a total of 11 restrictions, and you used 5 different sets of hand seals. Did you take away all the failing sect inheritance jade slips about restrictions?" Lu Ping was alarmed and said with a smile, "Of course not. Failing sect was known as the #1 sect in the North Sea back then, and its inheritance of restrictions and spells are as vast as the sea. I only got 8 or 9 sets, and it's obvious that we're lucky this way. I know these restrictions, so it's easy for me to break them." Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng snorted with dissatisfaction. He had been studying all kinds of restrictions and spells all his life, and originally wanted to show off the elegance of a senior expert in front of these two junior disciples. However, he didn't expect that his martial nephew, Lu Ping, would steal the limelight, so he was naturally very dissatisfied. Along the way, there were some scattered spiritual materials that De Bao also volunteered to bring over. However, most of them were middle-grade and high-grade spiritual materials, and the three of them didn't care about them. However, De Bao was never tired of it. Lu Ping hung a storage bag under his neck and let him play around the three of them. As the last light curtain was broken by Lu Ping, the sound of spell explosions rang out. The three hurriedly cast out their mystic treasures and spells to protect themselves. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng saw that apart from the golden scale sword, Lu Ping was actually holding an ordinary top-grade magic treasure, the golden light mirror, in front of him. He frowned and said, "Why don't you have a decent magic treasure? Although this golden light mirror has some special effects, it doesn't match with your cultivation method." Lu Ping smiled. Disciple's magic treasure was broken by Spiritual Master Jin Li a few days ago, so this is just to make up the numbers. I've been focusing on cultivation these days, so I didn't have the time to buy it. This time I'm here to ask Martial Uncle if there's a chance to pick a magic treasure for me. Zhu Xianmeng snickered and said, although Zhongshuan Laozu is a master of artificing, he can't have magical treasures all over the place. This trip to Zhongshuan's cave might be peaceful at the moment, but once we enter the cave, I'm afraid there will be a storm of blood. Junior brother, you are too optimistic. Lu Ping chuckled and did not reply. When the three of them looked out of the restriction, they realized that they had already reached the interior of the cave. Hidden by the trees, there were pavilions and towers that looked like a paradise. In the distance, there were two rumbling sounds of spells. It was obvious that the Water Crystal Palace and the Heaven Fisher Sword sect, who had arrived first, were attacking the restriction formations of some of the doors. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng waved his hands and dozens of rays of light scattered in all directions inside the cave residence. At the same time, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng closed his eyes as if he was sensing something. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng knew that Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng was using a minor supernatural power to sense the location of the heavenly wind leaf. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng stood on his left and right sides to protect him. Lu Ping took a step back intentionally and got out of the range of Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's minor supernatural power. After a while, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng opened his eyes with a serious expression. Looking at Lu Ping and Zhu Xuanmeng's questioning gaze, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng smiled bitterly and said, "We're not very lucky. We're going in the wrong direction. The location of the heavenly wind leaf is right behind the Crystal Palace and Skyrend. If we want to get the heavenly wind leaf, we have to pass through the middle of the two sections." Zhu Xianmeng was stunned. Lu Ping smiled and said, "It's already not bad. At least the place that the two sects are attacking doesn't have the heavenly wind leaf, right?" Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng nodded and smiled bitterly. "That's a blessing in disguise. If the heavenly wind leaf is in the building that the two sects are attacking, I'm afraid we'll have to start a war with the two sects if we want to get it." The three of them hid their identities and passed through the middle of the two sections. Naturally, they could not hide from the cultivators of the two sections. Skyrend's attack on the formation slowed down and then ignored Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two. Obviously, the speed at which the three of them entered the cave abode was far beyond their expectations. However, the cave abode was obviously not something that the two sects could take down. It was already good enough that the two sects could enter the cave abode first and get the biggest share of it. After that, the cultivators of East Ocean would flood in. That was why Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two dared to take the risk and bet that the two sects would not waste time to stop them. The Heavenly Splitting Sword sect ignored their actions. Even if the three of them had some tricks up their sleeves, they would not be able to break through the formation and obtain the treasures of the cave abode as quickly as the Heavenly Splitting Sword sect. The Heavenly Splitting Sword sect was currently attacking the storage room of Old Ancestor Deep Profundity. Old Ancestor Deep Profundity had spent his entire life forging artifacts, so his collection was definitely abundant. Unfortunately, the artifact refiners on the other side had already been taken by Water Crystal Palace. When Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two saw that Skyrend was indifferent to their appearance, they had some hope. Then, they saw a late-stage core forging realm cultivator, who had reached the 5th stage core forging realm, step out from the crowd and slowly followed behind Lu Ping and the other two. "Damn it, this Crystal Palace is too overbearing." Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng cursed. Zhu Xianmeng asked, "This person followed behind us without threatening us or stopping us. What is the Crystal Palace trying to do?" "Surveillance." Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng said unwillingly, "The cultivators of the Crystal Palace are busy breaking the restriction of the refining room and have no time to care about us. They are also afraid that we have some tricks up our sleeves and will get the benefits first, so they sent someone to spy on us. Once we find the treasure, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace will rush over and demand the treasure. At that time, we will be outnumbered and have no choice but to give in." Zhu Xianmeng said with hatred, "Isn't he afraid that we will kill him?" Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng glanced at him and said, "The Crystal Palace is the overlord of the East Sea. If we kill a cultivator of the Crystal Palace, we will definitely be hunted by the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace is sure that we won't dare to kill them. Moreover, this person is keeping a distance from us to prevent us from attacking him. With his cultivation, even if the three of us go all out, we may not be able to kill him in a short time. When the other cultivators of the Crystal Palace arrive, we will still be dead. The three of them had dark expressions on their faces. Seeing this, the Water Crystal Palace cultivator behind them revealed a mocking smile. Trying to pick up the scraps of the Water Crystal Palace? Other than the four great sects of the East Sea, who else would have the guts to do so? Let's see if I can use those restrictions. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng and the other two's eyes lit up when they heard Lu Ping's words. They suddenly remembered that along the way, Lu Ping had used several restrictions that were obviously from the Fei Ling sect. The pavilion where Tianfeng Yi was located was against a mountain wall and the interior of the building was deep inside the mountain. Lu Ping and the others pretended to fiddle in front of the pavilion for a long time before they finally broke the light curtain of the formation at the entrance. Seeing that the three of them broke the formation so easily, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace thought that there would be nothing good inside. However, following the usual style of the Crystal Palace, the cultivators still followed them in. Not long after the cultivators of the Crystal Palace walked in, the broken restriction shield at the entrance of the pavilion was strangely restored. Lu Ping originally wanted to restore the restriction shield immediately after the three of them entered to block the cultivators of the Crystal Palace outside. However, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng stopped him and said, "If you block him outside, he will be even more suspicious. Maybe when we are ready to go out, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace will already be blocking us at the entrance." Lu Ping looked at Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng's cold eyes and knew that he had the intention to kill. Without saying anything, he changed to a set of hand seals and cast them on the restrictions on the left and right side. Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng seemed to have sensed something and smiled without saying anything. However, he was getting more and more surprised by his disciple nephew's performance. After entering the pavilion, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng seemed to have confirmed the location of Tianfeng Yi. After Lu Ping broke a few restrictions in succession, he could not help but quicken his pace and walked directly into the mountain behind the pavilion. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng looked at each other and hurriedly chased after him. Turning around the attic, he saw a closet dug out from the stone wall in the belly of the mountain. A blue restriction protected the closet, and Liang Xianfeng was standing in front of the closet. Behind the restriction, there was a palm-sized gray object that looked like a withered leaf placed in an open jade box. Tianfeng Yi. The cultivators of the Crystal Palace turned around the pavilion and saw the object in the closet and shouted in surprise behind the three of them. "Hee, you actually know what this is?" Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng turned around with a murderous aura around him. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng were also on guard, ready to attack. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace was not afraid at all under the suppression of Spiritual Master Liang Xuanfeng's late-stage core forging cultivation. He said coldly, "The Crystal Palace wants this Tianfeng Yi. I advise you not to cause trouble. The disciples of the Crystal Palace behind me will be here soon." When Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng saw that the cultivator of the Crystal Palace was about to tear a talisman, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng slashed with his hand and an invisible wind wheel slashed towards the cultivator of the Crystal Palace. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace could not care less about the talisman in his hand. With a step, a crystal wall rose in front of him and was immediately smashed by the wind wheel. When Lu Ping looked up, he saw that the cultivator of the Crystal Palace had blood flowing out of his mouth and nose. At the same time, the talisman in his hand was torn. Under the scornful gaze of the cultivator of the Crystal Palace, a ray of light flew out. Lu Ping and Zhu Xianmeng joined forces to attack from the left and right. The golden scale sword released a sword chi of true essence. Zhu Xuanmeng's pipa played a few notes and several invisible sound blades flew towards the cultivator of the Crystal Palace. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace took out a crystal plate with the word, "Protect," on it. A crystal light curtain was cast to protect him in the middle. Then, he used a flying axe to block Zhu Xuanmeng's sound blades. He ignored Lu Ping's sword chi and retreated into the attic. However, the cultivator of the Crystal Palace still underestimated the first-stage core forging cultivator behind him. The cultivator of the Crystal Palace who was retreating felt a great force coming from the light curtain, pushing him back a few steps. Although the light curtain was not broken, the cultivator of the Crystal Palace spat out a mouthful of blood again. However, the eyes of the Water Crystal Palace cultivator still revealed a sinister smile, because as long as he retreated from the belly of the mountain, it would only take a moment for him to escape from the pavilion and meet up with the Water Crystal Palace cultivators who had come to reinforce him. At that time. Chapter 298. As soon as the Crystal Palace cultivator retreated from the mountain, his gloomy smile froze on his face. At the top of the stairs of the pavilion, a restriction had been condensed again. The escape light that he had released after tearing the talisman was now circling in front of the light curtain condensed by the restriction. The cultivator roared furiously and the flying axe in his hand smashed towards the barrier of light. With a boom, the entire barrier of light trembled. Immediately after that, the magic arrays and restrictions within the pavilion also shook. However, the barrier of light did not break. The Crystal Palace cultivator's face changed. Liang Xianfeng and the other two had already attacked again. Finish it quickly, don't hold back. Liang Xianfeng sent another invisible wind will toward the Crystal Palace cultivator. A few invisible strings flew out of Zhu Xuanmeng's pipa. Lu Ping changed his sword momentum. The great river flows east with an indomitable momentum blocked the space where the Crystal Palace cultivator could dodge. He could only choose to fight the attacks of the three head-on. In the desperate eyes of the Crystal Palace cultivator, Liang Xuanfeng's wind will had already cut his defensive light curtain. The crystal jade pendant above his head wailed and fell down. His other magic weapon was tightly entangled by Lu Ping's golden scale sword. A tiny string flashed in the air and the head of the Crystal Palace cultivator flew up. A golden core with 5 golden patterns suddenly flew out of the headless body. Just as Liang Xianfeng was about to capture it, the golden core hit the light curtain fiercely. This time, the light curtain finally collapsed. The escape light that had been blocked before disappeared again. The golden core also shattered and turned into a strong wave of spiritual power that rushed in all directions. The three of them bore the brunt of the attack. Liang Xianfeng did not care. The violent air wave was constantly weakened, blocked, and divided in front of Liang Xianfeng. Finally, it turned into a breeze. With Liang Xuanfeng's help, it was much easier for Zhu Xianmeng and Lu Ping to resist the impact of the air wave. The three of them exchanged glances. Enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng turned around and returned to the side of the mountain, ready to break the seals on the cupboard. Lu Ping wanted to follow, but he didn't want to expose his trump card too much. Zhu Xianmeng, on the other hand, started searching around the pavilion for other valuable items. Lu Ping walked to the next light barrier, only to find that it had already been destroyed by the shockwave when the golden core of the Crystal Palace cultivator was destroyed. The golden light was nowhere to be seen. Lu Ping's heart sank and he hurriedly ran toward the entrance of the pavilion. From afar, he saw the golden escape light like a headless fly, bumping around in front of the last layer of the light curtain at the entrance of the pavilion. Lu Ping casually extinguished the escape light and heard a roar from the light curtain outside the pavilion. Then, the restriction of the entire pavilion shook as if it was going to be destroyed in the next moment. Lu Ping's face changed and he made a few hand seals. The light curtain at the entrance of the pavilion flickered and the situation outside the pavilion appeared in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping looked back and saw that Liang Xianfeng and Zhu Xianmeng had heard the noise and rushed over. He quickly said in a deep voice, "The cultivators outside have broken into the inner layer of the cave mansion. Now there are cultivators everywhere outside the pavilion. Many of them have already started fighting. Now, a group of cultivators is outside the pavilion attacking the defense array. Uncle Master, did you get the Skywind leaf?" When Liang Xianfeng heard that it wasn't the cultivators from the Crystal Palace, he immediately relaxed. When he heard Lu Ping's question, his face immediately lit up and he nodded. "Yes, I did. Later, we'll take advantage of the chaos when the cultivators come in and break out of the encirclement. If we accidentally get separated, then we'll meet up at the inn on Silver Sword Island in 3 days. Be careful and stay alive. Liang Xuanfeng's last sentence was actually for Lu Ping. Although Lu Ping's strength had already impressed the two of them, his cultivation was still the lowest among the three of them. At this moment, several more attacks hit the light curtain, causing it to shake and shatter. Outside the pavilion, more than 10 core forging cultivators rushed in, followed by many blood condensation cultivators. Zhu Xianmeng threw a magic tool over. Lu Ping caught it and saw that it was the magic tool the cultivators from the Crystal Palace used to block the three's attacks, the crystal jade token with the word guard written on it. Zhu Xianmeng said, "This is the defensive magic tool of that person. His flying axe has already been destroyed, and you happen to have no defensive magic tool. Use this magic tool for now." Lu Ping thanked her and didn't ask what else Zhu Xianmeng had gained in the pavilion. The cultivators that rushed into the pavilion searched everywhere. Lu Ping used the remnants of the pavilion's restrictions to isolate the three's auras. While the others were busy searching for treasures, the three of them rushed out of the pavilion together. No, these three have already entered. They weren't among the people that rushed in just now. Just as Lu Ping and the others were about to rush out of the pavilion, one of the cultivators finally noticed something was wrong and shouted. "Damn it, why did I say there was nothing in the pavilion?" It turns out that the three of them got it first. Kill them. Leave the treasures behind and I'll spare your lives. For a moment, the crowd was agitated. 7 to 8 core forging perfected masters shouted and attacked together, surrounding the three of them. Perfected Liang Xianfeng took the lead and sent a mid-stage core forging cultivator blocking the door flying. He shouted, "Leave and blend into the crowd of cultivators who are looking for treasures." Then, he stood in front of the door and flicked his hands continuously. 7 wind wheels attacked the cultivators that were chasing after him. While the cultivators behind him were blocked, perfected Liang Xianfeng turned into dozens of streams of wind and disappeared in front of everyone. Using perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cover, Zhu Xianmeng moved her feet and appeared hundreds of feet away. With another flash, she became one of the cultivators who were looking for treasures. Lu Ping could tell that Zhu Xianmeng had used a small flying mystic art. But unfortunately, even the flying mystic instrument, the magic cloud bracelet, that he had been using all this time, was swallowed up by the collapsing space in Ziyue Cave Heaven. Fortunately, Lu Ping had obtained a mysterious jade slip on Fei Ling Island back then. It recorded a lot of Fei Ling sect's secret techniques. With every step Lu Ping took, a figure appeared. Although he was not as fast as Zhu Xianmeng, the 18 figures were able to disrupt the cultivators who were chasing after him. Art of Sea Deception. After Lu Ping advanced to the core forging stage, his ability to use spells had undoubtedly improved. These 18 figures could be said to be exactly the same as Lu Ping. They were very lifelike. Although they would be exposed quickly under the detection of divine sense, they had greatly distracted the cultivators who were chasing after him. When Lu Ping turned around a building, there was only a mid-stage core forging cultivator behind him. The mid-core forging realm cultivator was overjoyed when he saw that no one was chasing after him. He thought that he would be able to take all the spoils for himself this time. He transmitted his voice to Lu Ping, "Brat, hand over the thing in your hand. Where are you going to run now?" However, Lu Ping did not care. He did not stop for a moment. At the same time, he kept making hand seals around him. At first, the cultivator was a little surprised, but along the way, nothing unexpected happened. The cultivator was sure that Lu Ping was bluffing. When he saw that Lu Ping was still running away, he suddenly lost his patience. He opened his mouth and a small flying needle shot towards Lu Ping's back. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly turned around. The last hand seal in his hand was pushed by Lu Ping's vigorous true essence. It formed the last seal in Lu Ping's hand. Buzz, a loud sound came. Under the horrified eyes of the cultivator, the array formation restriction that was destroyed by the cultivators suddenly recovered. It formed an invisible light curtain, trapping the cultivator inside the array formation. Lu Ping pulled up several light curtains in front of him in an attempt to block the flying needle. However, these light curtains did not have the slightest effect in front of the flying needle. A flying needle-type magic weapon. Lu Ping secretly cursed his bad luck. He actually encountered such a strange magic weapon. It was simply unavoidable. The golden scale sword swept out, and the flying needle moved slightly to avoid it. In any case, the golden scale sword was not as flexible as the flying needle. Although the cultivator was trapped in the array formation restriction of the Immortal's Cave by Lu Ping, the flying needle was still under his control. It relentlessly chased after Lu Ping. Lu Ping gave a cold snort. Lu Ping threw a black pill with a hint of gold towards the flying needle. After the pill flew out, Lu Ping's hand seal changed. Suddenly, it burst into a poisonous flood dragon. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it pounced towards the flying needle. War pill, myriad poison war pill. This was a unique war pill that Lu Ping had refined using the dark prison poison flame and his own intermediate grade pill furnace. He had refined it according to the myriad poison pills pill recipe. More importantly, Lu Ping had added myriad poison serum to dozens of 1,000-year and 500-year-old spirit grasses. Under the influence of Lu Ping's master-level alchemy technique, he had refined 2 myriad poison war pills. Originally, Lu Ping had refined these war pills on a whim. He did not expect that it would actually come in handy. After the flying needle pierced the body of the poisonous flood dragon, a chi-chi sound came out. The originally sarcastic expression of the cultivator trapped in the array formation by Lu Ping was suddenly replaced by a ferocious expression. Ah! A painful howl sounded out. The spiritual sense and true essence attached to the flying needle were quickly corroded. The flying needle pierced through the poisonous flood dragon and was about to fly towards Lu Ping. But unexpectedly, the poisonous flood dragon had already turned around in midair. The poisonous flood dragon opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of venom at the poisonous needle that had just flown out of its body. The poisonous flood dragon's black body turned transparent as it spat out the venom. However, the flying needle suffered another heavy blow and the cultivator in the array formation once again cried out in pain. Lu Ping took advantage of the greatly weakened spiritual sense and true essence of the cultivator on the flying needle to slash down with the golden scale sword. With a zheng sound, the flying needle was shattered into several pieces by the golden scale sword. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of the cultivator's mouth. At the same time, his head slightly tilted back. It was obvious that his spiritual sense and true essence had suffered heavy damage. Although flying needle-type magic treasures were the most difficult to defend against and defensive magic techniques were difficult to block, they were extremely fragile. When used against an enemy, they relied on their nimbleness to make it impossible for the opponent to catch them. However, once they collided with an opponent's magic treasure, the magic treasure itself would most likely suffer heavy damage. Lu Ping couldn't care less about the flying needle that was 3 feet away from him. His body was drenched in cold sweat and he forgot to withdraw the protective aura chi around his body. With a wave of the golden scale sword, he charged towards the trapped cultivator in the array formation. The cultivator was at the 4th layer of core forging. If it was on an ordinary day, Lu Ping naturally wouldn't be his opponent. However, Lu Ping was extremely familiar with the array formation of the heavy profound Immortal's Cave. Taking advantage of the cultivator's greed and arrogance, he imprisoned the cultivator in the array formation and almost turned him into a target. Then, he destroyed his magic treasure, causing him to suffer heavy injuries. Now, Lu Ping had the intention to kill him and steal his treasures. Chapter 299. In the end, Lu Ping still underestimated the strength of a mid-stage core forging cultivator. The arrays inside the profound heavens cave could only be used to trap enemies. Lu Ping wielded the golden scale sword, but it still couldn't do anything to the cultivator trapped inside the array. A muffled sound was heard, and the entire array shook. While the cultivator was resisting Lu Ping's attack, he still had the strength to use a small drumstick to attack the surrounding array. Only now did Lu Ping feel that his offensive methods were really lacking. Aside from the 12 laws, Lu Ping only knew a few sword techniques or magic treasures. The Gentian Grand Array was Lu Ping's last resort, so he naturally wouldn't use it lightly. When Lu Ping was in the blood condensation realm, he could rely on his strong magic power and superb swordsmanship to be invincible among cultivators in the same realm. However, after condensing his gold core, his cultivation was the lowest among cultivators in the same realm. The magic treasures in his hands were no longer as advantageous as before. Moreover, battle techniques that had reached the realm of intent had become common. Some outstanding cultivators, like Zhu Xianmeng, had already cultivated a minor divine ability. Lu Ping coldly snorted. Just as the cultivator inside the array was attacking in all directions, Lu Ping flicked his hand and threw out a red bead. It was the Scarlet Afterglow bead. The Scarlet Afterglow bead flew above the cultivator, and countless red threads fluttered down, wrapping around the cultivator inside the array. The cultivator seemed to know that this magic treasure was very difficult to deal with. A layer of protective shield lit up in front of him, and a three-colored halo flowed around the shield. A minor divine ability, another minor divine ability. Lu Ping's own protective earth energy had only condensed 2 kinds of natural oddities, and he still needed one more to form a minor divine ability, the Water Curtain True Astral Shield. As the red threads wrapped around the cultivator's protective earth energy changed into various shapes. It seemed that the cultivator's minor divine ability was not very strong. Natural oddities were very rare. How many people could be like Lu Ping, who used jars and ponds to condense their protective earth energy? The cultivator propped up his protective earth energy to buy time. The small drumstick in his hand flew up and hit the Scarlet Afterglow bead in the air. Lu Ping's golden scale sword parried the 4 top-grade magic treasures that were entangled with it and slashed at the small drumstick. At the same time, the Scarlet Afterglow bead tried to dodge it. However, the Scarlet Afterglow bead, which was in a state of casting, was still a step too late. The golden scale sword was once again entangled by the 4 magic treasures. The small drumstick hit the Scarlet Afterglow bead, causing it to wail and fall down. Lu Ping felt as though he had been punched in the chest, and he felt suffocated. Fortunately, Lu Ping did not store the Scarlet Afterglow bead into his core space. Otherwise, this attack might have damaged his divine sense and caused him to suffer some injuries. However, just as the Scarlet Afterglow bead was struck down, the cultivator's minor divine ability was finally broken by the tightening red threads. Immediately after, the cultivator cried out in alarm as his shoulder was pierced. Lu Ping had long since activated the Netheraqua sword. It was not easy for him to find the flaw in the attack. Unfortunately, the cultivator was 1 step ahead of him and he was able to avoid being hit in the heart. The Netheraqua sword was meant to kill with a single strike. After failing to hit its target, Lu Ping hid the Netheraqua sword again. However, the cultivator was already on guard against it. The possibility of a successful sneak attack was close to 0. It could only serve as a distraction. Fortunately, the Netheraqua sword's attack had caused the cultivator to suffer more injuries. Lu Ping retrieved the Scarlet Afterglow bead, which had suffered a great deal of damage. He did not have the time to check it. Instead, he reached out with his hand and a golden ball of water, only 1 foot in diameter, suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping formed several hand seals and the golden ball of water transformed into a 3-foot-long, strange, 4-legged golden WIRM, which pounced towards the cultivator. The cultivator was trapped in the array and could not move around like Lu Ping. There were many techniques that he could not use. In the face of Lu Ping's attack, he could only face it head-on. Originally, the cultivator did not think much of Lu Ping. However, he did not expect that this cultivator, who had just reached the core forging stage, would have so many tricks up his sleeves that he was forced into such a difficult position. Seeing Lu Ping form a strange four-legged golden worm and pounce towards him, the cultivator's set of 4 magic tools were entangled with the golden scale sword. He did not dare to use the small drumstick because he was wary of the Netheraqua sword. The cultivator had no choice but to use a top-grade protective magic tool in front of him. At the same time, he propped up the minor divine ability that he had just broken. However, once these magical techniques and divine abilities were broken, they would be taken back by the cultivator. After a short period of recuperation, they could recover their original power. For the cultivator, after his divine ability had been broken, he tried to forcibly activate it again. Not only would its power not be as great as before, but the power of the divine ability would also drop significantly after the battle. If he forcibly activated it too many times, it could even completely destroy the divine ability. The four-legged golden worm slammed into the defensive magic tool, causing water to splash and shatter. However, before the cultivator could figure out why Lu Ping's magical technique was so useless, he felt the true essence attached to the defensive magic tool rapidly melt, as if it had encountered ice and snow in boiling water. The cultivator was shocked and quickly withdrew his defensive magic tool. However, the surface of the magic tool had been corroded and was almost ruined. After Lu Ping used the water control technique, the golden liquid that had been smashed into water once again formed a four-legged golden worm in mid-air and pounced towards the cultivator again. The cultivator did not dare to use his magic tool to block it. A series of magical techniques struck the golden worm. The golden worm was either smashed or blocked, but the cultivator's true essence, without exception, was greatly corroded and consumed. In fact, Lu Ping's true essence was also rapidly being consumed. Although the myriad poison liquid could also be controlled by the water control technique, it was clearly not weak when used against an enemy. However, this was a method that harmed the enemy and oneself. When Lu Ping used the corrosive true essence and the magic tool to attack the opponent, his own true essence was also greatly consumed and corroded. Fortunately, Lu Ping had used the myriad poison liquid to condense his own protective gang qi, so the true essence in Lu Ping's body was somewhat resistant to the myriad poison liquid. The nether water sword finally launched its attack. After being caught by the cultivator, the little drumstick, relying on the quality of its magic tool, chased after it and beat it fiercely. The four-legged golden worm had already pounced on the cultivator's protective magic power. The tricolored gang qi was quickly corroded by the myriad poison liquid, and even strange colored smoke rose above the cultivator. The four-legged golden worm's body, which was originally shining with a golden light, had also become somewhat dim due to the consumption of the cultivator's true essence. The cultivator was already seriously injured and could only passively take a beating after being imprisoned in the formation. His advantage of having a high cultivation level and abundant true essence was completely worn away by the myriad poison liquid. Finally, the cultivator's strength was exhausted. The 4 top-grade flying swords were completely suppressed by the golden scale sword, and the little drumstick was also helpless against the looming nether water sword. Just then, a large silver jade seal suddenly appeared above the cultivator's head and immediately came crashing down. The landslide, that had been hidden by Lu Ping for a long time, finally revealed its ferocious face. With an unparalleled force, it pressed down on the cultivator's head, becoming the last straw to defeat the mid-core forging cultivator. The already fragile protective magic power, which had been corroded by the myriad poison liquid, was shattered by the landslide. This time, even the cultivator's ears were overflowing with blood, and his face was as pale as paper. The landslide rose and fell again, leaving Lu Ping with a look of despair and disbelief in the mid-core forging cultivator's eyes. Lu Ping swallowed a triple transformation spirit pill. When he was in the blood condensation realm, it was a pill that could restore magic power. But now that Lu Ping had advanced to the core forging realm, it was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. Helplessly, Lu Ping could only swallow another triple transformation spirit pill. In this dangerous place, Lu Ping had to constantly adjust himself to his best state. After putting away the cultivator's storage bracelet, there were not many things that could make Lu Ping's eyes light up. The set of 4 top-grade magic tools that could fight against the golden scale sword also did not enter Lu Ping's eyes. Only the small drum stick was a magic treasure. Lu Ping felt that it might be useful to him, so he put it away. Strictly speaking, this unlucky cultivator was not weak. After all, he had 2 magic treasures, the flying needle and the small drum stick. He had also cultivated a small magic power, which could be regarded as quite an achievement among the mid-core forging cultivators. Unfortunately, he fell into Lu Ping's trap and was confined in the narrow space of the array formation. He could only display 60% or 70% of his strength, and in the end, he died in Lu Ping's hands. The heavy profound Immortal's Cave was growing more and more chaotic. At present, the cultivators from Heaven Breaking Sword Faction and Water Crystal Palace were attacking the heavy profound Grand Palace's defensive magic array. The cultivators who were trying to fish in troubled waters were also attacking the Grand Palace in a chaotic manner. The booming sounds of magic arts could be heard without end. However, the Heavy Profound Hall was the most important place in the Heavy Profound Cave Mansion. It was also the main hub of the entire mansion's defensive array. Naturally, it was not something that a few core forging cultivators could easily break. Lu Ping looked at the group of cultivators surrounding the hall. Their cultivation was at least at the mid-core forging stage. With great difficulty, he suppressed the greed in his heart to get a piece of the pie and walked towards the back of the cave mansion. There were many cultivators who had the same idea as Lu Ping. Most of them were single rogue cultivators, or like Lu Ping, whose cultivation was not good enough. These cultivators appeared around the cave mansion, deliberately avoiding each other to avoid conflict. After coming to the cave mansion, Lu Ping naturally had his own purpose, and that was the spiritual vein of the cave mansion. Naturally, Lu Ping would not have the idea of moving the spiritual vein. That was simply an act of courting death. The spiritual vein of this cave mansion could only belong to Skyrend or the Crystal Palace. Moving the spiritual vein was a complicated process, and there was at least a medium spiritual vein in this cave mansion. It was far from the small spiritual vein that Lu Ping had moved before. This was also why the two sects were now at ease to attack the Heavy Profound Hall instead of sending people to protect the spiritual vein first. Lu Ping's goal was the spiritual gathering pearl. This cave mansion had been hidden in the sea for nearly 4,000 years. How could a medium spiritual vein not condense a spiritual gathering pearl? The spiritual vein was the foundation of all the defensive arrays in the Heavy Profound Cave Mansion that could last for 4,000 years. Naturally, the protection was extremely tight. What Lu Ping relied on was some of the restrictions of the Fei Ling sect that he learned from the mysterious jade slip that he brought out of Fei Ling Island. Chapter 300. The ground of the Immortal's Cave Mansion was also under the protection of the Immortal's Cave Mansion. De Bao couldn't use the Earth Escape technique to go underground to find the spiritual vein. After Lu Ping arrived at the Immortal's Cave Mansion, he found a remote place. Seeing that he didn't attract anyone's attention, Lu Ping made a few hand signs in succession. The ground within a radius of 10 feet suddenly rumbled and shook. Then, Lu Ping quickly left. Soon, cultivators who heard the sound came to investigate the nearby area. A moment later, Lu Ping also pretended to be a cultivator who was attracted by the ground shaking and wandered around the area where he had just cast the hand signs. At this moment, 4 cultivators from the Crystal Palace rushed in the direction of Lu Ping. The 4 of them had an aggressive appearance and the aura of their cultivation pressed down on all the cultivators in the area. The cultivation of the 4 people was not necessarily enough to suppress the cultivators on the spot. Of the 4 people, 2 were at the mid-core forging realm and 2 were at the early core forging realm. One of them had the same cultivation as Lu Ping, but the name of the Crystal Palace was too big. The surrounding cultivators who didn't want to provoke them left the area. Lu Ping also left, but De Bao was still underground. Previously, Lu Ping used his half-baked spirit clear eyes to find that the spiritual qi in this area was the thickest in the Immortal's Cave mansion besides the heavy profound hall. Presumably, this was the place where the spiritual vein of the Immortal's Cave mansion passed through. Therefore, Lu Ping broke the restriction on the ground and barely opened an opening. He put De Bao in and bet on whether or not he could find the spiritual gathering pearl. This was not like the time when Lu Ping activated the restriction light curtain in the Immortal's Cave mansion. This time, it was equivalent to opening a hole in the entire Immortal's Cave mansion's protective array. The amount of true essence consumed and the movement caused was naturally not small. After Lu Ping left, he used the invisibility technique and then used the restriction in the cave to cover his tracks. He sneaked back in the dark and watched the 4 people not far away. The 4 cultivators in the Crystal Palace saw that there were no eyesores around them. The 6th stage core forging realm cultivator, who should be the leader of the 4, said, "Hurry up. Skyrend and the other idiots haven't noticed yet. With the senior brothers there, they will never know that there is another important place in the Heavy Xian Cave besides the refining room, the storage room, and the Heavy Xian Hall." The 4 of them quickly placed an array disc on the ground within a radius of 30 feet. At the same time, they also placed some other spiritual materials in the surroundings in a regular pattern. Lu Ping did not have a deep understanding of array formations, so he could not tell what kind of array formations the 4 of them were setting up. He heard the weakest Crystal Palace cultivator ask, "Senior Brother Mu, the spirit vein in the Heavy Xian Cave mansion really passes through here. Don't make any mistakes." The leading cultivator of the Crystal Palace with the highest cultivation was Senior Martial Brother Mu. He said, "It can't be wrong. According to the incomplete records in the Fei Ling sect's jade slip we obtained, the spirit vein in Zhongxian's immortal cave indeed passes through here." Another mid-stage core forging realm cultivator interrupted, "Senior Brother Mu is an expert in array formations. His judgment will not be wrong. Let's see if we can gain anything." Another early-stage core forging realm cultivator also curiously asked, "Senior Brother Mu, Senior Brother Gao, what treasure are we looking for this time? Why would Heavy Xian Laozu hide his treasure in the spirit vein?" The 2 mid-stage core forging realm cultivators, Senior Brother Gao and Senior Brother Mu, looked at each other. Senior Brother Gao said, "Junior Brother Zhang, Junior Brother Wan, didn't you notice that as a cave mansion with 2 medium spirit veins, something is missing? It seems like something is missing." Junior Brother Wan, who was first stage core forging realm, hesitated. Then, he suddenly realized and said, That's right. Such a big cave mansion, why is there no spirit herb garden in it?" Junior Brother Zhang hesitated and said, "After all, Heavy Xian Laozu is a refiner, not an alchemist. What's wrong with not growing spirit herbs?" Senior Brother Mu shook his head and said, "Junior Brother Zhang was born in a famous cultivation family in the East Sea. He is also a cultivation genius. Since he was young, he has never lacked all kinds of cultivation resources. In the cultivation world, cultivation resources are always in short supply. Any cultivator who wants to open a cultivation cave will open a spiritual herb garden in any place where spiritual herbs can grow. This is almost common sense. Junior Martial Brother Zhang is already a core forging cultivator. When the time comes, don't forget to open a spiritual herb garden." Junior Brother Zhang blushed and said, "I'm ashamed. Thank you for your advice, Senior Brother." When Junior Brother Wan heard that Senior Brother Mu confirmed his guess, he was surprised and asked, "Why did Heavy Xian Laozu open a spirit herb garden underground?" Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Gao looked at each other and smiled. This time, it was Junior Brother Zhang who spoke first, "Is it a spatial magic tool?" Heavy Xian Laozu hid a spatial magic tool underground. Not only is it hidden, but it can also make full use of the power of the spirit vein. Senior Brother Gao praised him. Junior Brother Zhang has a long history of learning, so his knowledge is quite good. As they spoke, the 4 finished setting up the formation. Senior Brother Mu said, "I'm going to open the formation. When the time comes, I will tear a hole in the formation on the ground. Because of the formation's protection, there won't be any movement. Junior brothers, you still have to pay attention to the surroundings to avoid people spying on you. After the two agreed, senior brother Mu made a few hand signs and the 4 formation plates were activated. The formation on the ground suddenly cracked a few feet long. Different from Lu Ping, there was no movement around. The formation also didn't react violently like when Lu Ping tore it. When Senior Martial Brother Gao saw that Senior Martial Brother Mu had opened the array formation, he quickly shook the spirit beast pouch on his waist, and a 1-meter-long pangolin fell to the ground. Senior Martial Brother Gao pointed at the ground, and the pangolin immediately disappeared into the ground. Lu Ping listened to the conversation of the 4 and finally understood. No wonder he felt that there was something wrong with the heavy Xian cave abode, especially when he asked Debao to look for the spirit-gathering pearls in the spirit vein. This feeling was especially strong. He always felt that this cave abode was missing something. It turned out that this cave abode occupied a large area and had a grand atmosphere. However, there wasn't a single spirit herb garden. Immediately, Lu Ping started to worry. The pangolin was obviously a spirit pet controlled by Senior Brother Gao using some kind of forbidden secret technique. Its cultivation had already reached the late blood condensation realm. If they met Debao underground, Debao would definitely not be a match for the pangolin. Senior Brother Gao would also know through the pangolin that there were other cultivators coveting the treasures in the spirit vein, even if Lu Ping didn't go for the spatial artifact. Now, they could only pin their hopes on Debao's sly character. Lu Ping's spirit pets were willing to follow him, and Lu Ping didn't place any restrictions on them. Therefore, Lu Ping knew nothing about Debao's situation. He could only hope that it could detect danger in advance and escape. Fortunately, although the pangolin was a mid-level demonic beast, and its cultivation was higher than Debao's, that was only in terms of strength. In terms of earth escape, Debao was not much weaker than the pangolin. Moreover, when Debao entered the mid-blood condensation realm, he refined the condensed blood bead from a pangolin, which further enhanced his earth escape. Sure enough, a moment later, Senior Brother Gao shouted, "Not good. There's a demonic beast underground. It's actually a spirit-seeking mouse. It can run very fast. Quickly check if there are other cultivators around." Junior Brother Zhang and Junior Brother Wan heard the news and quickly looked around. Senior Brother Mu frowned and asked, "How is it?" "We haven't found it yet, but we found 2 spirit-gathering pearls. One of them was snatched from the spirit-seeking mouse by Tai Shan. However, this mouse is very slippery." When it saw that it was no match for Tai Shan, it turned around and ran. "Ah! Senior Brother, save me!" Suddenly, 2 screams came from afar. Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Gao were shocked. They quickly took out their magic treasures and got up to help. However, as soon as they moved, cultivators from the east, south, and north surrounded them. A moment later, 3 female cultivators slowly walked over from the west where the screams came from. Lu Ping recognized 2 of them. One was Zhu Xianmeng, and the other was Chu Ting. Only the one in the middle that Lu Ping didn't recognize was a late-stage core forging cultivator. "Who are you? How dare you kill a disciple of the Crystal Palace? Aren't you afraid that the Crystal Palace will be punished?" Senior Brother Mu asked sternly without a trace of fear. His expression was exactly the same as that of the spiritual master of the Crystal Palace who died in the hands of Lu Ping and the other 2. The Crystal Palace is still as overbearing as ever. Even when death is at hand, they are still so strong. The middle-aged female cultivator who came with Zhu Xianmeng sneered and said in a sarcastic tone. Chu Ting frowned and said coldly, "Martial Aunt Jiang, it's better to act quickly. We don't want any delay." The middle-aged female cultivator, Martial Aunt Jiang, snorted coldly. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with Chu Ting's tone, but she was also a little afraid. She took out a golden saber and rushed toward the 2 mid-stage core forging cultivators of the Crystal Palace. The other 5 cultivators, except for Chu Ting, also launched a siege. Senior Brother Mu and Senior Brother Gao were no match for 4 hands. Not to mention that there was not only a late-stage core forging cultivator holding the line, but the other 4 were also not ordinary mid-stage core forging cultivators. The 2 of them had just sent out a talisman for help, and a moment later, they were beaten to death by the 5 people. Chu Ting came to the place where Senior Brother Mu had torn open the protective array. After melting an elixir in her hand, she sprinkled the elixir liquid on the ground. Suddenly, a rich fragrance wafted in the air. Chu Ting made a few hand signs and the elixir liquid soaked into the soil. The fragrance in the air immediately disappeared. Lu Ping looked at the elixir in Chu Ting's hand with a solemn expression. He was already holding the golden scale sword in his hand, ready to attack at any time. The leader, Martial Ant Jiang, urged, "Girl Chu, are you done?" The 2 people of the Crystal Palace had already sent out a talisman for help. If the heavy mystery hall had not been breached and the cultivators were not fighting for the treasures inside, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace would have already come to help. Mei Qin is getting more and more arrogant. She only sent out a first-stage core forging girl for such an important mission. Chu Ting was focused on the matter in front of her and ignored Martial Ant Zhang's mockery. Zhu Xianmeng, who was beside her, said coldly, "She doesn't need to deal with these trivial matters. Martial Ant Zhang is enough to deal with it. My master is about to break through to the Dharma realm. If there is anything that Martial Ant Jiang is unable to do, my master will naturally take care of it." Zhu Xianmeng mocked her for making a mountain out of a molehill and saying that she was not as smart as Immortal Mei. Martial Ant Jiang was about to explode, but when she heard Zhu Xianmeng say that, "My master is about to break through to the Dharma realm," she forcibly suppressed her anger. The other 3 mid-stage core forging cultivators were like clay statues, ignoring the confrontation between Martial Ant Jiang and Zhu Xianmeng. At this moment, a hole suddenly appeared in the ground. Lu Ping, who was hiding at the side, felt his heart skip a beat. Then he saw a pangolin with blurred eyes coming out of the ground. After Senior Brother Gao of the Crystal Palace died, as a forbidden beast, the pangolin would also be seriously injured. It might even lose its mind and die of madness. However, Chu Ting had used some kind of elixir to lure the pangolin out of the ground. Lu Ping had obviously guessed what Chu Ting was going to do and was worried that De Bao would also be lured out by her. Therefore, he was prepared to snatch the pangolin when he appeared. Chu Ting patted the pangolin's head with her palm. The pangolin opened its mouth and spat out 5 spirit-gathering pearls, 1 big and 4 small, and then fell to the ground, dead. Chu Ting put the 5 pearls away and said, "It's a pity that the pangolin didn't find a spatial instrument in the spirit vein. But it's not bad to have 5 spirit-gathering pearls. This big one is obviously enough to nurture a small spirit vein. Who dares to kill a disciple of the Crystal Palace?" As soon as Chu Ting's voice fell, an angry roar came. Before the person arrived, his aura had already oppressed them. "Oh no, it's a master at the peak of the core forging realm. Damn it! What are those cultivators in the boudoir doing to collect information? I can't believe there's such a master among the cultivators of the Crystal Palace." Martial Uncle Jiang hurriedly cursed. He reached out his hand and smashed the array plates set by the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. The torn array on the ground immediately closed up. At this moment, a figure was rushing toward them from the direction of the heavy mystery palace. "Go!" Martial Uncle Jiang shouted. The 6 cultivators of the core forging realm in the boudoir quickly flew away. The master of the Crystal Palace who was chasing after them roared angrily and chased in the direction of the 6 cultivators. Then another 5 cultivators of the middle and late stage of the core forging realm from the Crystal Palace rushed to the place where the array was set up. Looking at the mess on the ground, everyone's face turned pale. Then they stood up and rushed in the direction of the master of the core forging realm from the Crystal Palace with a murderous look. After everyone left, Lu Ping quickly walked to the place where the array was set up. He quickly made a few incantations with his hands. He didn't care about the true essence in his body being drained like water. The ground shook and a huge rat scurried out of the ground. Lu Ping grabbed Debao and didn't wait for him to make a sound. He put him into the spirit beast bag and quickly left. Not long after Lu Ping left, a few cultivators with long swords on their backs rushed over. Seeing the scene in front of them, how could they not know what had happened? They laughed out loud, gloating. Then they quickly stopped. They saw more than 10 cultivators of the Crystal Palace also rushing over. They fiercely glared at the cultivators of Skyrend. Finally, they couldn't stand the strange look in Skyrend's eyes and also chased in the direction of the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. After the cultivators of Skyrend left, other cultivators rushed over to check. They were discussing who had eaten the heart of a bear and the leopard to have the guts to kill the master of the core forging realm from the Crystal Palace. At this time, Lu Ping had already walked to a place where there was no one. After putting up a few light curtains, he took Debao out. Seeing that Debao wasn't hurt and wasn't confused by Chu Ting's pill, he let out a long sigh of relief. Debao squeaked a few times and then spat out a spirit-gathering pearl the size of half a fist from its mouth. Lu Ping was happy and said, "I didn't expect to have such a harvest. This spirit-gathering pearl is enough to nurture a small spirit vein." This spirit-gathering pearl was the same size as the large spirit-gathering pearl that the pangolin spat out. Hearing Lu Ping's praise, Debao became even more excited and sometimes squeaked. Lu Ping had a strange look on his face. He saw Debao spit out a golden house that was half a foot long from its mouth. Chapter 301. This is. Lu Ping looked at the small golden house in his hand in surprise. Was this the spatial magic item that Laozu of Zhongxian had hidden in the spiritual vein? Lu Ping knew that he had taken advantage of the Crystal Palace this time. His facial expression changed a few times. He poured a stream of Zhen Yuan into the golden house, intending to refine it. Unexpectedly, when Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan poured into the golden house, it was like entering a bottomless pit. Lu Ping was startled. Although this golden house was not a cave magic item, its quality was definitely above Qian Zhong Su. It gave Lu Ping the feeling that he had when he refined the Na Chuan cauldron. With Lu Ping's strength of core forging stage, he actually could not refine it in a short period of time. Lu Ping decisively stopped the input of Zhen Yuan. Now was not the time to refine the magic item. After putting the golden house into the storage ring, Lu Ping walked towards the heavy mystery palace that was about to collapse. He mixed in with the cultivators who were still wandering around the heavy mystery palace looking for treasures. At this moment, most of the restrictive spells in the heavy profound immortals cave had been broken by the cultivators by force. Apart from the artifact forging room, storage room, and heavy profound grand hall, which were the three most important places that had been looted by the Crystal Palace and sky-splitting sword sect, there were still many other buildings. The defensive formations of these buildings had been broken by the cultivators who came later and looted them wantonly. Quite a number of cultivators who were favored by fate had obtained a lot of benefits. However, what followed were scenes of battles between other cultivators driven by greed. Lu Ping wandered in the heavy mystery palace. It was already empty. The ground was a mess. Many magic items, jade slips, jade boxes, and jade bottles were scattered on the ground. It could be seen that when the heavy mystery palace was broken by the cultivators, there was a chaotic battle. Lu Ping was wondering how the palace could hold up until now and had not collapsed. With a slight movement of his divine mind, he found that there were a large number of arrays, restrictions, and talismans flashing on the walls of the palace from time to time. Along the way, it could be said that Lu Ping had mastered a lot of the restriction spells of Failing Sect that he had learned from the mysterious jade slip. Seeing the flickering lights on these walls, his face suddenly changed dramatically. Lu Ping rushed out of the heavy profound grand hall and saw that there were still a large number of cultivators shuttling back and forth inside the cave mansion. Many cultivators who were unwilling to give up were still rummaging through the various buildings, hoping to find the hidden treasures. As Lu Ping rushed out of the cave abode, he cast a sound amplification spell and shouted, "Everyone, retreat quickly. The protective array is about to collapse." When the cultivators in the cave heard this, their expressions changed dramatically. They quickly looked up at the light shield of the protective array above their heads. They saw that the seawater outside the light shield was constantly turbulent. From time to time, the fish in the sea curiously bumped into the light shield and peeped at the situation inside the cave. There was no change on the light shield, there were no signs of it collapsing. When the crowd saw that the cultivator who issued the warning was only a first-stage core forging cultivator, they all cursed, "What kind of knowledge does this kid have? What nonsense! How can the protective array arranged by Heavy Profound Grand Hall Laozu collapse so easily? I'm afraid this kid wants to scare us away and then come back to take advantage of us. Quickly get out of here, or you'll stay here forever." Lu Ping turned a deaf ear to the curses and threats from the others and continued running out of the cave dwelling. He didn't have the time to stop and explain in detail. He was running for his life now, and he had already done his part by reminding them before he left. There were also cultivators who heard Lu Ping's warning and wanted to retreat. Seeing that Lu Ping left without looking back, some cultivators who originally thought that Lu Ping had some kind of plan also hesitated. In any case, the cave abode had almost been cleaned up by the cultivators. Staying here was just to pick up some scraps that were looked down upon and hope to find some undiscovered treasures. When Lu Ping came out of the cave abode's protective array, he looked back and found that less than half of the cultivators had followed him out. Lu Ping sighed and quickly fled towards the sea. Although core forging stage cultivators didn't fear the pressure of the seawater at the bottom of the sea, when the great array protecting array collapsed, the seawater suddenly pressed down. Even late core forging stage cultivators wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Just as Lu Ping came out of the sea, a muffled rumbling sound suddenly came from the bottom of the sea. Then, the calm sea suddenly sank several tens of feet, and the surrounding seawater surged, creating waves that were tens of feet high. The waves rippled into the distance and directly destroyed a reef island not far away. The cultivators who followed Lu Ping out of the sea looked at the scene in front of them with lingering fear. Lu Ping glanced at them indifferently, turned around, and turned into a stream of water and flew away. Not long after Lu Ping left, more than 10 core forging enlightened masters rushed out of the sea in a sorry state. Surprisingly, half of these enlightened masters were late core forging cultivators, and the rest were mid-core forging cultivators at the 5th or 6th layer. As for early core forging cultivators and blood condensation cultivators, there was not a single one among them. After these enlightened masters came out, their bodies were wet, and their hair was disheveled. Many of the cultivators' protective magic tools and magic treasures were broken into pieces, and many of them coughed out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, they were already seriously injured. At this time, Lu Ping was hiding in a cave at the bottom of the sea. The blood condensation demonic beast that originally occupied the cave had already been swallowed by Samling. Now, Lu Dague was crawling at the entrance of the cave to protect Samling. Because it was not easy for him to return to the sea, Samling became playful and had already disappeared without a trace. Lu Ping's entire body was surging with true essence, and his divine sense had already penetrated deep into the golden house. He was only one step away from successfully refining it. In Zhong Xian's cave, when Lu Ping received the golden house, he was slightly disappointed. In Lu Ping's opinion, with Zhong Xian's Laozu's identity as a grand refiner, this golden house should be a grotto heaven magic treasure. However, it was only a spatial magic tool. However, when Lu Ping began to refine this magic tool, he discovered that the difficulty of refining this golden house was much harder than the Na Chuan cauldron. Suddenly, the golden house in Lu Ping's hand shone brightly. Finally, the refining was completed. Lu Ping let out a long sigh. Lu Ping threw the golden house on the ground, and the golden house suddenly became 3 feet big. Lu Ping smiled, reached out, and pushed open the door of the golden house, and walked straight in. The space in the golden house was much larger than the 1,000-bell millet. First, there was a large spirit herb garden. This spirit herb garden had not been taken care of for 4,000 years. It was nourished by the spirit vein underground, and the spirit herbs inside were growing on their own. Although it was messy, and there were more weeds than spirit herbs, each spirit herb was old and full of medicinal power. Moreover, the number of spirit herbs was also very considerable. Lu Ping was overjoyed. Among the spirit herbs here, the majority were millennium spirit herbs, and most of them had already matured. Lu Ping first cleaned up the spirit herb garden and reclaimed it. He then harvested the 1,000-year spirit herbs and 500-year spirit herbs that he could use for alchemy purposes. However, there were still a lot of 1,000-year spirit herbs growing in the garden. Lu Ping didn't know what to do. Because Lu Ping was an alchemy grandmaster, he only had 4 or 5 core forging realm Dan recipes. In addition, he also had the heart-tempering Dan recipe. So, Lu Ping could only look at the 7 or 8 millennium spirit herbs in the spirit herb garden and sigh. At the thought of the heart-dissolving pellet, Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Through the spirit herb garden in the Golden House, Lu Ping had already collected all the 1,000-year-old spirit herbs he needed to concoct the heart-dissolving pellet. Among the 3 most important spirit herbs, Lu Ping already had 2 of them. Only the yin-yang branch was left. The Golden House was buried in the spirit vein of the Zhongxian Immortals Cave for 4,000 years. If Zhongxian Laozu had planted millennium spirit herbs in the Golden House, with the additional nourishment from the spirit vein, not only would they have matured, but they would also be able to be used for alchemy. Lu Ping looked around, but he couldn't find any traces of millennium spirit herbs. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. When he looked up, Lu Ping suddenly realized that he had only looked at a small space in the Golden House. In front of him, there was a huge mountain that was almost 100 feet tall. Lu Ping was very suspicious. The Golden House was a spatial magic tool. Compared to other spatial magic tools, the space inside it was too big. It was almost equivalent to a heavenly abode treasure. However, when Lu Ping refined the Golden House, he had already confirmed that there was no heavenly abode treasure restriction inside the Golden House. Lu Ping started to walk towards the mountain. He seemed to be walking fast, but he was actually walking slowly. In just a moment, he had reached the waist of the mountain. There, he saw a place that was sealed by a magic array. Lu Ping was very happy. Currently, the magic array of Fei Ling's sect was almost defenseless against Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping hadn't used the method to open this sealing magic array before. Lu Ping made a few hand seals. After losing the nourishment from the spirit vein, the magic array seal became a lot dimmer. After Lu Ping made the hand seals, a small millennium spirit herb garden appeared in front of Lu Ping's eyes. It was exactly the millennium spirit herb garden that Lu Ping had been hoping for. Stone spirit grass, jade imperial flower, 7-star lung leaf grass, cloud jade branch. The corner of Lu Ping's eyes twitched. There were 96 matured millennium spirit herbs here. There were also close to 200 matured millennium spirit herbs that were still growing. This was a place that could tempt even a Dharma adept to go to. What is this? Lu Ping carefully passed through the obstruction of the spirit herbs and arrived in front of a millennium spirit herb. Half of the millennium spirit herb looked withered and ferocious, while the other half was flourishing with leaves and flowers. If this wasn't a yin-yang branch, then what was it? Lu Ping couldn't suppress the joy in his heart. This was because he found another yin-yang branch not far away from this one. Lu Ping carefully picked the 2 yin-yang branches and stored them in a jade essence box that he had prepared in advance. Then, he sealed them with a spirit sealing talisman. All the spirit herbs needed to refine the forging heart pill had been prepared. All that was left was Lu Ping's cultivation and alchemy skills. As long as Lu Ping could improve his cultivation to the 2nd layer of core forging and consolidate it, he could immediately make preparations to advance to the middle stage of core forging. Lu Ping came out of the spirit herb garden and resealed the spirit herb garden with a magic array. Then, he continued towards the top of the mountain. At the center of the lonely mountain in the space of the golden house, a small lake with a circumference of 10 meters appeared in front of Lu Ping. Chapter 302. On the edge of the small lake, there was a stone tablet with 3 ordinary characters engraved on it, quenching fire pool. Lu Ping couldn't believe his eyes. Was his luck really that good? Lu Ping suppressed the excitement in his heart, and with a step, a stream of Zhen Yuan passed through the ground into the small lake. With the input of Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan, the water in the small lake only made a gurgle sound, and a wave appeared. Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan was so huge that if it was ordinary seawater, it would be enough to make a huge wave that was dozens of feet high. However, in this lake, it could only make a few inconspicuous waves. Lu Ping used the water control technique, and the Zhen Yuan in his body flowed into the lake like a stream, and the lake finally began to slowly ripple. Lu Ping's hands made 9 water control seals in a row, and the whole lake water finally began to slowly flow up after Lu Ping's face turned red. The weight of this lake water was even heavier than gold and iron. Streams of lake water rolled up, and recondensed into a huge ball of water in the sky. When Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan was almost consumed by half, the whole lake water was almost lifted into the air by Lu Ping's water control technique. Lu Ping stretched his head to look at the bottom of the lake, and saw a black ball of water the size of a head spinning at the bottom of the lake. Xianyuan heavy water. It really was Xianyuan heavy water. Low-grade heaven-tier spirit water of heaven and earth, one of the 4 refining treasures of heavy Xian Laozu. Under the heavy pressure of the lake water in the air, Lu Ping didn't have time to be happy. After confirming that it was indeed Xianyuan heavy water at the bottom of the lake, Lu Ping finally put the ball of water that was affected by the Xianyuan heavy water back into the pool. The dark essence heavy water was a heaven-grade, low-tier spirit water of heaven and earth. How could heavy profound Laozu waste it recklessly and directly use it for quenching? Obviously, under the influence of the dark essence heavy water, this pool of spirit water, which had already mutated into a second-grade spirit material, was used to quench the newly forged spirit tools and magic treasures. The biggest effect of the profound essence heavy water was that after the cultivator fused with it, the spirituality of the spiritual object would be refined into the golden core by the cultivator's divine sense, greatly increasing the capacity of the cultivator's true essence. Therefore, the cultivators who fused with the profound essence heavy water were all people with vigorous and long-lasting true essence. In the process of fighting, they often didn't have to worry about running out of true essence. Once the battle fell into a stalemate or was besieged, these kinds of cultivators were existences that gave their opponents headaches. Just as Lu Ping placed the mutated spirit water back into the small pond, a faint spiritual energy drifted out. Lu Ping naturally felt it, and he felt even more strange in his heart. The space in the golden house was far beyond that of an ordinary top-tier spatial artifact. It was not a grotto heaven, but there was not only a spiritual herb garden inside it, but also a seemingly meaningless lonely mountain. Now, there was actually a trace of spiritual energy left in this lonely mountain. Lu Ping was sure that there was no spirit vein in this lonely mountain. Moreover, a spatial artifact could not nurture a spirit vein at all, not even a grotto heaven magic treasure. Only when a grotto heaven magic treasure formed a small kiliocosm like the 7-star sky could the spirit vein be moved into the grotto heaven and not dissipate. Thinking of this, Lu Ping was startled. Could it be? Lu Ping flew down the mountain and returned to the door of the golden house. Then, he took out Qian Zhong Su and opened the thick book slowly. The space inside the book was about to be revealed in front of the door of the golden house. At this moment, the door of the golden house suddenly opened by itself. Qian Zhong Su flew into the golden house, and the 2 spaces immediately overlapped and merged. Amidst the loud rumbling sound, the merged space continued to expand. Qian Zhong Su's body slowly landed on the ground of the space, and then immediately merged with the soil of the spiritual herb garden and disappeared. In the space of the golden house, the area of the spiritual herb garden suddenly expanded by 3 times. The lonely mountain in the space of the Golden House was forcibly raised by 500 feet, and it stood tall in the newly expanded space like a heavenly pillar. Inside the Qianzhong Su, Lu Ping's several years of business had all settled down in the newly formed space. It was no longer as crowded as before. Just the peach blossom tree's spirit alone took up nearly half of the space of the Qianzhong Su. Not mentioning the shock in Lu Ping's heart, the happiest people at this moment were the two wan birds inside the Qianzhong Su. Lu Qin came to this new world, and she was even more excited. She had already gone to explore this new place, and there was no trace of her. The wooden one Yu quickly followed. However, the changes in the space of the Qianzhong Su also made this shy monster dumbfounded. The amethyst wasps swarmed out of their nest. In this vast space, a large number of spiritual herbs had been nurtured for thousands of years. Even ordinary flowers and plants had accumulated for thousands of years, and their flowers contained a large amount of essence of heaven and earth. This was the place where the amethyst wasps brewed nectar and increased their cultivation. After more than 2 years, Lu Ping had already trained this swarm of amethyst wasps into the Dao soldier formation. The amethyst wasps were only one step away from entering the blood condensation realm. At that time, Lu Ping's amethyst Dao soldier formation would be able to multiply and expand, and its power would increase further. Fei Ling's sect was so bold. At this moment, Lu Ping finally understood why Fei Ling's sect wanted to forge the two strange spatial artifacts, Qianzhong Su and the Golden House. It wasn't to create a grotto heaven, but to create a minor kiliacosm. This was a set of combined artifacts. Each of them could be a separate spatial artifact, but after they were combined, the function of this spatial artifact was far beyond ordinary artifacts. It had the potential to surpass a grotto heaven and become a minor kiliacosm. Fei Ling's sect wanted to build another dojo, or rather, they wanted to move the dojo on Fei Ling Island into this minor kiliacosm. That small mountain was where Fei Ling's sect's dojo was located. The reason why Lu Ping could feel the spiritual energy on the small mountain was because Fei Ling's sect wanted to use the small mountain as a prototype. After it became a minor kiliacosm, it could be used to nurture spirit veins. This was also why Zhongxian Laozu placed the Golden House in the spirit vein to nurture. Of course, if you wanted to achieve the foundation of a mini kiliacosm, these two spatial celestial devices were far from enough. Perhaps Fei Ling's sect had also refined other matching spatial celestial devices. When they were combined, this space would become larger, and the embryonic form of the world inside would be more complete. Unfortunately, Fei Ling's sect's plan to create a minor kiliacosm had just begun, but it was already destroyed. Otherwise, once it became a minor kiliacosm, the sects in the North Sea might not even be able to find Fei Ling's sect's dojo. Unfortunately, Fei Ling's sect's plan to create a minor kiliacosm had just begun, but it was already destroyed. Otherwise, once it became a minor kiliacosm, the sects in the North Sea might not even be able to find Fei Ling's sect's dojo. Lu Ping swallowed a medicinal pellet and cultivated to recover his lost true essence. At the same time, he was thinking about his future plans. The appearance of the Golden House, the discovery of a large number of thousand-year-old spirit herbs, and the mystic heavy water forced Lu Ping to adjust his cultivation plan. One day later, Samling, who was playing outside, suddenly ran back in a panic. Lu Ping was shocked, and he immediately realized that he had been careless. As Samling's cultivation became higher, the characteristics of the green sea snake on his body became more and more obvious. The identity of the green sea snake was extremely special among the demon race. If he was discovered by other demon cultivators or human cultivators, it would be a disaster for him. There was no time to communicate with Samling, so Lu Ping directly put Samling into the Golden House. That place was naturally much stronger than the spiritual beast pouch that could only be used for hibernation. Then, he came out of the underwater cave and came to the surface of the sea. He felt waves of spiritual energy coming from the surface of the sea a few miles behind him, and from time to time, he could also hear the dull roars of spells. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and did not find any danger lying in ambush nearby. So, he summoned Samling and asked him a few questions. Then, he frowned and looked at the source of the spiritual energy fluctuations behind him. It turned out that when Samling was playing in the sea, someone had discovered his identity and chased after him. The direction of the person chasing him was the direction of the battle. Lu Ping muttered to himself for a while, then used the invisibility art and slowly approached the battle. The roars of spells were getting louder and louder. Lu Ping carefully spread out his divine sense. In front of him, there were two early-stage core forging cultivators fighting. One of them was even someone that Lu Ping knew. Lu Ping had a strange expression on his face. He used his divine sense to probe the other person. Unexpectedly, that person was extremely vigilant. His divine sense, which was no weaker than Lu Ping's, formed a wall and firmly blocked Lu Ping's divine sense. "Since you're here, then show yourself." Since he had been discovered, there was no need for Lu Ping to hide, so he flew over the sea. The cultivator who had discovered Lu Ping did not give up on attacking Lu Ping just because it was difficult to tell if he was a friend or foe. Obviously, he thought that with Lu Ping's appearance, even his enemies could not do anything to him. Ever since Chu Ting learned about the appearance of Zhong Xian's cave mansion, she planned an attack on the Crystal Palace with her boudoir. However, after the operation began, a series of bad luck found her. First, after killing the 4 core forging masters of the Crystal Palace, she did not find the spatial magic tool that Zhong Xian Laozu might have hidden in the underground spirit vein. Then, she did not expect that there was a peak core forging master among the cultivators of the Crystal Palace, and he chased her all the way. During the battle, several people in the boudoir were injured. If it weren't for Martial Uncle Liang who suddenly appeared out of nowhere and joined forces with Martial Uncle Jiang to block the pursuit of the peak core forging master of the Crystal Palace, the boudoir would have fallen into the siege of the cultivators of the Crystal Palace. Just when Chu Ting thought that everyone was out of danger, the boudoir, the Crystal Palace, and the cultivators of Skyrend who were watching from afar were suddenly ambushed by dozens of East Sea demon cultivators. After the battle, everyone split up to break out of the encirclement. Chu Ting escaped under the cover of second senior sister Zhu Xianmeng and Martial Uncle Liang, but she encountered the demon cultivator in front of her. This graceful demon cultivator was originally pursuing something, but as soon as he saw Chu Ting, he was instantly shocked by her beauty, and he'd long since forgotten about his pursuit and insisted on taking Chu Ting as his wife. How could Chu Ting be willing to allow that? Thus, the two of them started fighting. Chu Ting was carefully guided by Daoist Plum, and she was talented. With her master-level alchemy skills, she pushed her cultivation to the peak of the first level of the core forging realm in just 3 to 4 years. She was proud and arrogant, and she had always looked down on cultivators of the same level. Chu Ting originally thought that although the cultivation of the third-level core forging realm demon cultivator was far above her, it would be easy for her to escape. She did not expect that the strength of the person in front of her was so much higher than her. No matter what Chu Ting used, the person in front of her was able to resolve it. Looking at the person in front of her calmly dealing with her attacks, obviously thinking of capturing her alive after her qi was exhausted, Chu Ting suddenly felt a burst of powerlessness. Chu Ting did not expect to meet Lu Ping in this situation. Chapter 303. Without saying a word, Lu Ping's golden scale sword soared into the air and slashed at the beast cultivator. In the sky, the golden scale sword absorbed more than 600 psychic sword lights into its body. Lu Ping had used almost all his strength in this attack. The beast cultivator's calm expression turned serious after witnessing Lu Ping's swordsmanship. But then, he said indifferently, "Ha, this is what you humans call a hero saving a damsel in distress, right? You are indeed capable. But in the end, this beauty is still mine." After the beast cultivator advanced to the core forging stage and transformed into a human, he had the power to open a mansion and set up a government office in the demon clan. Unlike the core forging stage human cultivators who called themselves Daoist masters, the beast cultivator preferred to call himself mansion master. A gourd suddenly appeared in the beast cultivator's hand. He tipped the mouth of the gourd down, and a dark blue wave swept out towards the golden scale sword that was slashing at him. The golden scale sword shook, as if it had turned into a big fish swimming against the current, trying to ignore the impact of the dark blue water and continue to slash at the beast cultivator. Unexpectedly, once the golden scale sword came into contact with the dark blue water, Lu Ping suddenly felt an invisible force tearing the golden scale sword's body from all sides. Not only could the golden scale sword not maintain its countercurrent posture in the water, but even Lu Ping's divine sense was greatly disturbed when it came into contact with the golden scale sword. The golden scale sword's momentum was fierce, but it slashed at him as if it was drunk. The beast cultivator laughed loudly and said, "Although your swordsmanship is strong, what can you do to my precious gourd? This extreme blue magnetic water is a rare treasure that I found in the depths of the East Sea. It's the best to break magic tools and magical powers like yours." Lu Ping snorted coldly. This extreme blue magnetic water could at most restrain his swordsmanship. To say that it could break Lu Ping's swordsmanship was the beast cultivator's verbal attack. The golden scale sword shook. Without the influence of the extreme blue magnetic water, Lu Ping's huge divine sense immediately regained control of the golden scale sword. The beast cultivator smiled and said, "What a powerful divine sense. It seems that you have cultivated many secret techniques, but are you also an alchemist like this beauty? Or are you an array master? However, this palace master's divine sense is not inferior to yours." Chu Ting placed her high-grade pill furnace above her head, firmly protecting herself. At the same time, she controlled the bright yellow flames to fight against the enemy. At the same time, Lu Ping saw a wind bag appear in Chu Ting's hand. As she controlled the flames, the wind bag blew out a scorching gust of wind. The wind increased the intensity of the flames, causing the power of Chu Ting's bright yellow flames to greatly increase, burning towards the Yao cultivator. The demonic cultivator blew at the mouth of the gourd. This time, a muffled roar came from the gourd. A gale swept out and immediately suppressed Chu Ting's wind bag. The bright yellow flame was blown back by the gale from the gourd and burned towards Chu Ting. Fortunately, Chu Ting's fire control technique was excellent. The demonic cultivator was not too ruthless. Before the flames burned her, Chu Ting regained control of the flames. She did not let the fire seed she had refined burn her. Otherwise, it would really be a joke if it was spread out. The demonic cultivator also had an expression of lingering fear. He said, "Fortunately, I was too heavy-handed this time and almost hurt this palace master's beauty." Chu Ting's face was as gloomy as water. On the surface, she seemed to ignore the demonic cultivator's incessant chatter, but in her heart, she was already furious. Both Lu Ping and Chu Ting were alchemists. They had their own experiences in the cultivation of divine sense. Their achievements were far beyond cultivators of the same level. Moreover, the demonic cultivator's divine sense cultivation was also quite extraordinary. It far surpassed Chu Ting's and was on par with Lu Ping's. Lu Ping and Chu Ting joined forces to fight against the enemy. However, the demonic cultivator still looked calm. However, his eyes swept away the laziness from before. He said to Lu Ping, "It seems that you are not an alchemist. You are obviously cultivating a water-attributed cultivation method. Moreover, your attainments in it are extremely high. In the future, if your cultivation is like this palace master, I am afraid that even this palace master will not be your opponent." After Lu Ping's help, the main attack against the demonic cultivator became Lu Ping. Chu Ting could only play a role in restraining the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator also became more serious when facing the two of them together. Chu Ting looked at Lu Ping with some surprise. She naturally knew that Lu Ping was an authentic alchemist. Moreover, after the Northern Alliance elixir gathering, he defeated the elite alchemists of Purple Talisman Pavilion, Wind and Thunder Island and Skyrend. His performance in the elixir gathering showed that his alchemy skills were now above hers. At this time, after being inadvertently reminded by the demonic cultivator, she discovered that Lu Ping actually cultivated a water-attributed cultivation method. What was even more incredible was that at this time, Lu Ping's cultivation had also reached the peak of the first layer of the core forging realm. How could this not surprise Chu Ting? Chu Ting had never admired any cultivator of the same generation. Previously, Lu Ping had at most made her think highly of him. Now, Chu Ting inexplicably felt a trace of admiration for Lu Ping. Using a water-attributed cultivation method to control the fire seed in alchemy, how much effort and price must be paid to achieve the achievement of an alchemy grandmaster? The gourd in the demonic cultivator's hand was obviously a treasure. When Lu Ping and Chu Ting joined forces to fight, the gourd had already spat out 3 kinds of heaven and earth mysterious treasures of water, wind, and fire, which made Lu Ping very envious. The demonic cultivator's expression changed, and suddenly a strange fan appeared in his hand. He waved it to his side, and with a hum sound, the nether water sword, which had already sneaked 10 feet away from the demonic cultivator, was sent flying by the fan. Taking advantage of the moment when the demonic cultivator's attention was attracted by the nether water sword, a bronze mirror suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's hand. A golden light flashed from the mirror and instantly sank into the gourd in the demonic cultivator's hand. The red flame spewing out of the gourd suddenly stagnated, and then returned to normal. Chu Ting, who was suppressed by the red flame, suddenly crushed a pinky-sized black object in her hand. Then, she stretched out her hand and sprinkled the black powder into the bright yellow flame. The bright yellow flame, which was originally in decline, suddenly rose and pushed back the red flame. The demonic cultivator glanced at the golden mirror in Lu Ping's hand and shook the gourd in his hand. The red flame suddenly stopped retreating. Lu Ping's golden scale sword changed, and he used the 1,000 piles snow sword art. Among the 1296 sword lights, there were 648 psychic sword lights, which turned into 3 sword waves and rushed toward the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator's face was solemn. He stretched out his hand and pointed, and the gourd once again spewed out the extreme blue magnetic water toward the sword waves. However, the psychic sword lights in each sword wave suddenly jumped out, each turning into a sword dragon, which passed through the obstruction of the extreme blue magnetic water and rushed toward the demonic cultivator. The demonic cultivator was not afraid in the face of danger. He waved the strange fan in his hand, and a sword dragon was suddenly blown into pieces. The demonic cultivator pointed to the gourd again, and a gust of wind swept out, and another sword dragon was blown into dizziness. The third sword dragon had already approached. The demonic cultivator curled his lips, and a rotating shield suddenly lit up around his body. Protective small magical power. The sword Jiao was instantly shredded into pieces. The enlightened master looked at Lu Ping mockingly, only to see Lu Ping still pointing his finger at him. The golden scale sword that was hidden among the shredded sword Jiao abruptly flew out and, to the enlightened master's surprise, the golden scale sword shattered the enlightened master's small defensive skill. Zhen Yuan Sword Qi. Before the demonic cultivator broke free from the surprise, his face suddenly changed, and a golden halberd appeared in his hand again, directly blocking in front of him. Dang! The water nether sword was knocked away by the halberd. Lu Ping's mind trembled, and the body of the water nether sword was obviously damaged. This halberd was the demonic cultivator's life source magic weapon. The golden halberd in the demonic cultivator's hand exuded a dazzling brilliance, and the surrounding spirit Qi, under the influence of the halberd, seemed to be restless. The golden scale sword followed closely after the water nether sword, but was knocked away by the halberd. The halberd then swept horizontally, wanting to completely break the golden scale sword. Obviously, the halberd's quality was far above the golden scale sword. The corner of Lu Ping's mouth twitched, and the golden scale sword deftly avoided the sweep of the halberd, luring it away from the demonic cultivator's side. Immediately after, a behemoth suddenly appeared above the demonic cultivator's head, silently falling towards the demonic cultivator. When the demonic cultivator sensed that something was wrong, landslide was already right in front of him. At this moment, the demonic cultivator's face finally changed, not in fear, but in rage. The demonic cultivator in front of him suddenly disappeared, and a behemoth that Lu Ping had never seen before suddenly appeared in front of the two. It was a giant fish. The giant fish leaped up, and its huge fish tail drew a beautiful arc in the air, colliding with the falling landslide. The surface of the sea suddenly became turbulent, and waves tens of feet high were stirred up. Some were caused by the landslide colliding with the fish tail, and some were caused by the giant fish leaping into the sea. Landslide flew away in response, and Lu Ping's divine sense suffered another heavy blow. Immediately, he had a splitting headache, and the golden core in his heart core space also jumped. Kun fish. Chu Ting's face finally changed. Hurry up and go. Lu Ping shouted to Chu Ting beside him, and then turned into a stream of water, fleeing into the distance. Chu Ting woke up from her shock, and bright yellow flames wrapped her whole body, turning into a yellow light in the sky, and instantly caught up with Lu Ping. A dull roar came from the bottom of the sea, and traces of blood appeared on the surface of the sea. A solemn voice came from the bottom of the sea, "This palace master's surname is Kong Yuan, do you dare to leave your names? Lu Jiu. Chu Ting. We will meet again in the future, and then we will decide who is the winner." Kong Yuan's voice came from afar, but he could no longer hear Lu Ping and Chu Ting's reply. An island-like ridge flashed on the surface of the sea, and the roaring waves spread out, only calming down after an unknown amount of time. Outside of Silver Sword Island, two streaks of light, one fire and one water, descended from the sky. Chu Ting's face was deathly pale, and Lu Ping coughed a few times. He coughed so quickly that traces of blood could be seen at the corner of his mouth. "How are you?" Chu Ting asked gratefully. "I'm fine." Lu Ping swallowed a threefold vitality augmenting pill. Seeing the pill in Lu Ping's hand, Chu Ting was stunned. Lu Ping glanced at her, and nonchalantly put the jade bottle of threefold vitality augmenting pill into his storage ring. "Why did you appear here?" This time, it was Lu Ping's turn to ask her. He, Liang Xianfeng, and Zhu Xianmeng had come to Silver Sword Island to explore Zhong Xian's cave mansion. Presumably, he could not hide it from Chu Ting. However, what puzzled Lu Ping was why Chu Ting was separated from her boudoir, and was being hunted by the demon cultivators alone. Composing herself, Chu Ting roughly told Lu Ping about how her boudoir ambushed the Crystal Palace cultivators in Zhong Xian's cave mansion, and how they were ambushed by the demon cultivators. Of course, she only briefly mentioned the matter of them trying to seize Zhong Xian's spatial artifact hidden in the spirit vein by Laozu. Lu Ping was well aware of this, so he naturally did not say anything. What, Martial Uncle Liang Xianfeng was seriously injured? Lu Ping's expression changed, and he asked. Chapter 304. Who could injure Uncle Master Liang? Lu Ping was shocked when he heard the news. Liang Xianfeng was an 8th-layer core forging cultivator, one of the 7 core forging cultivators of Zhenling sect known as the 3 Truths and 4 Spirits. Liang Xianfeng had cultivated several types of wind elemental spells. Even if he was besieged by cultivators of the same level, even if he couldn't win, it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape. Chu Ting looked at Lu Ping's shocked and angry expression. She didn't know why Lu Ping was like this, but she still said, "It's a shame. We were being chased by the cultivators of the Crystal Palace and were at a disadvantage." However, Uncle Master Liang suddenly appeared and joined forces with Uncle Master Jiang to resist the attacks of the peak core forging cultivators from the Crystal Palace. However, the monsters attacked and Uncle Master Liang fought with several late core forging cultivators to protect me and second senior sister from breaking out. After we broke out, we saw Uncle Master Liang vomiting blood from his injuries. Lu Ping's face was gloomy as he flew towards Silver Sword Island with Chu Ting. Along the way, his mind raced. It seems like this Taoist Master Mei is closely related to the sect. But Junior Marshal Aunt Liang was willing to risk her life to protect her disciple. Could it be that this Taoist Master Mei and Junior Marshal Aunt Liang are related? Chu Ting followed Lu Ping back to Silver Sword Island. She saw Lu Ping looking around the inns, residences, and shops along the way. He was no longer as anxious and angry as before. At this moment, Lu Ping's face lit up with joy. He stopped in front of a shop and looked around nonchalantly. Then, he walked in with Chu Ting following behind him. "Uncle Master, how are your injuries?" Lu Ping's heart finally relaxed when he saw Liang Xianfeng. Although Liang Xuanfeng's face was pale, he could still heal himself. His life was not in danger. Zhu Xianmeng had long been ignored by Lu Ping. Lu Ping clearly felt that it was not worth it for Liang Xianfeng to be injured because of the two girls. He was also angry at Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting. When a cultivator reached the late core forging stage, their strength increased greatly. However, they were also at their weakest because they had to make the final preparations to condense their Dharma power. At this time, it was taboo for a cultivator to be injured. A little carelessness could affect the cultivator's foundation, causing the golden core to be unable to fuse with the divine will at the last moment to reach the ideal grade. This would weaken the cultivator's foundation after advancing to the Dharma power stage, reducing the possibility of a cultivator advancing to the Dharma power stage, or even completely cutting off a cultivator's hope of advancing to the Dharma power stage. Liang Xianfeng was one of the late core forging cultivators of Jinling who had the highest chance of advancing to the Dharma power stage. He was Jinling's future leader, Laozu, and was related to Jinling's legacy. Obtaining the Sky Wind Leaf could be said to be a great opportunity for Liang Xianfeng. If his golden core could not fuse with the Sky Wind Leaf because of his injuries, lowering the final grade of his golden core, it would be a huge loss for Jinling. Zhu Xianmeng saw that after Lu Ping entered the cultivation room, he did not look him in the eye. When he saw his fifth junior sister following behind him, he naturally knew that Lu Ping was blaming them for dragging Liang Xianfeng down. He wanted to explain, but he opened his mouth, but no words came out. Liang Xianfeng opened his eyes and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Lu Ping had returned unharmed. He said, "This expedition was supposed to give you all some benefits, but I didn't expect the East Sea demon tribe to interfere. It seems like the East Sea is not peaceful anymore. Fortunately, the three of you are safe and sound, or else I would be a sinner." The three of them said that they did not dare. Then, Lu Ping asked, "Uncle Master, how is your injury? Will it affect?" Liang Xianfeng naturally understood what Lu Ping meant. Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting were also very nervous. Reverend Liang Xianfeng smiled bitterly. "I didn't expect Water Crystal Palace's Yao Wanshan's cultivation to have reached such a level. After he was defeated by senior apprentice brother Jiang back then, it could be said that he became courageous after being humiliated. Although his cultivation is a step behind senior apprentice brother Jiang, his strength is not low at all. If it wasn't for the fact that he used up too much of his transcendence energy, the demon cultivators who came later wouldn't have taken advantage of him." The three of them were shocked and they heard Liang Xuanfeng's last sentence. Clearly, the thing that Lu Ping did not want to happen the most had happened. Chu Ting was full of guilt while Zhu Xianmeng was on the verge of tears. Lu Ping glanced at the two of them in disgust. "Uncle Master, is there any way to remedy this?" Lu Ping's expression naturally did not escape Liang Xuanfeng's eyes. He thought to himself, "This child's character is very similar to my senior sister's. He always distinguishes between his own people and outsiders. It's just that he is a little narrow-minded." It's just that what happened back then. Liang Xianfeng saw the sincerity in Lu Ping's question and smiled happily. "It's fine. Actually, I had already prepared a high-grade Earth-level Heaven and Earth Spirit item. It was only because I heard about the Tianfeng leaf that I decided to take a gamble. Unfortunately, I still lack some opportunities. Obtaining the Heaven and Earth Spirit item damaged my foundation. In the end, I could only use the original high-grade Earth-level Heaven and Earth Spirit item to make up for the loss of my divine will." However, I believe that with my skills, even if I can only form a 6th grade golden essence, I have the confidence to break through to the Dharma stage. Lu Ping said fiercely, how can this be compared? If Uncle Master fuses with a sky-level heaven and earth spirit item, you can at least form a 7th grade golden essence. Not only will you be able to form a Dharma power, but you will also be able to enter the mid-Dharma stage in the future. If it's only a 6th grade golden essence, you will only be an early Dharma adept for the rest of your life. You will still be at the bottom of the Dharma adepts. Ever since Lu Ping had entered the core forging stage, he had a deeper understanding of the all-encompassing North Sea wave listening technique. Many of the unresolved problems had been easily solved by Lu Ping's eyes. In addition, Lu Ping had been asking Liang Xianfeng for advice on training over the past few days. His knowledge and experience were no longer the same as when he was a blood condensation adept. After Lu Ping's words, Liang Xianfeng sighed and did not say another word. Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting were sitting on pins and needles. For a moment, the training room fell silent. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly said, Uncle Master, if you have the help of the spirit forging pill, can you reach the level of forging the Skywind leaf? Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting looked at Lu Ping in shock. Liang Xianfeng smiled and said, I know what you want to say, but the spirit forging pills have already been distributed by Laozu to a few seniors who have already reached the peak of the core forging stage. Besides, there's not enough time. Lu Ping's expression became even darker. At this moment, Chu Ting said, there's another pill that might be able to save Uncle Master Liang. Liang Xianfeng asked in surprise, she even passed the bell cauldron pill to you? Although Liang Xianfeng was asking Chu Ting, he was looking at Zhu Xianmeng. Lu Ping could see that Zhu Xianmeng and Liang Xianfeng seemed to be closer, but Chu Ting was very unfamiliar with Liang Xianfeng. Zhu Xianmeng nodded and said, 5th junior sister is Master's only disciple. Master has already passed on all the pill recipes below the Dharma stage to 5th junior sister. Just as Lu Ping's heart was burning with hope, he heard Zhu Xianmeng say worriedly, although the bell cauldron pill can restore the root of Uncle Master's injury, 5th junior sister's current alchemy skills are not able to make this kind of pill with 4 to 5 kinds of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. Master is also in seclusion in the Northern Alliance, it's too late to invite Master over. Liang Xianfeng had obviously thought of this. When he heard this, he said indifferently, it's okay. Uncle Master doesn't have any hope of reaching the 7th grade golden core. Being able to enter the Dharma stage is already an achievement for most late-stage core forging cultivators. How do you know if you don't try? Lu Ping's spirit was lifted at this moment, and he said, in any case, there are 2 Grandmaster alchemists here. Although they have just broken through, there's still hope. If they can refine one, won't Martial Uncle be saved? Liang Xianfeng waved his hand and said, you don't know how difficult it is to make this kind of pill. Although I am not an alchemy master, where are you going to find those kinds of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs? Moreover, there are dozens of kinds of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs. Chu Ting was also sad. Obviously, she was not confident that she could make this kind of pill, nor did she have enough spirit herbs. Give me the recipe. Lu Ping's words surprised the 3 of them. Zhu Xianmeng could not help but ask, Junior brother Lu, do you have the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs to make the bell cauldron pill? Lu Ping naturally knew about the bell cauldron pill. Lu Ping also knew about the kinds of spirit herbs needed to make it. In fact, in the alchemy world, most of the spirit herbs needed to make pills were public. The importance of the recipe was not in the type of spirit herbs needed to make the pill, but the process of making the pill. This was the secret of the recipe. Otherwise, how could alchemy masters collect the spirit herbs from ordinary cultivators? Therefore, Zhu Xianmeng directly asked Lu Ping if he had the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs instead of asking how he knew about the spirit herbs needed to make the bell cauldron pill. Lu Ping found a sealed 3,000-year-old spirit herb garden halfway up the lonely mountain in the Golden House. There were nearly 100 mature 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, among which were the 4 kinds of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs needed to make the bell cauldron pill. When Liang Xianfeng saw that Lu Ping accepted the recipe from Chu Ting's jade slip, he was surprised that he had the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. But he still said, "Nonsense. How long has it been since you became an alchemy master? You've only made a few cauldrons of core forging stage pills. How dare you make such a high-level pill? 3,000-year-old spirit herbs can't be wasted like this." Lu Ping suddenly snickered and said, "Martial uncle, you're right. Up until now, I've only concocted 5 or 6 cauldrons of early core forging medicinal pellets. It's not because I don't have any spirit herbs, it's because I, a great grandmaster alchemist, only have 3 or 4 core forging medicinal pellet recipes." Lu Ping was trying to reap some benefits, but it was hard for others to adapt to the sudden change in attitude. Liang Xianfeng knew that Lu Ping had made up his mind to make the bell cauldron pill. Asking for some benefits now was just an act of flattery. Although he was touched, he still laughed and said, "What a joke. I, an alchemy master like Xinling, only have this little bit of accumulation. If this gets out, people will laugh at me for neglecting talents." Then, Liang Xianfeng took out 4 jade slips, 3 jade crystal boxes, and 2 jade marrow boxes. He said, "These 4 jade slips are the core forging stage pill recipes that I've collected for the past few years. I've already exchanged my collection for pills. I only have 4 jade slips, and one of them was obtained from the Heavy Profound Palace. I was planning to exchange it for a few pills from the Alchemy Pavilion when I returned to the sect. But now, you and these spirit herbs will benefit from it. But don't forget me if your alchemy skills can reach the late core forging stage in the future." Chapter 305. Lu Ping took a quick look at the recipes. There were 2 recipes for early-stage core forging pills, one for mid-stage core forging pills, and one for late-stage core forging pills. The 3 jade crystal boxes contained about 60 to 70 stalks of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, and the 2 jade marrow boxes contained nearly 30 stalks of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. Among them, there were 2 stalks of stone grass and blood-rot flower, which were used to concoct the Zhongding pill. Lu Ping put these things into his storage ring with a peace of mind. He smiled and said, "Uncle Master, you must be joking. This time, I will definitely take advantage of you. I'm afraid that before I can refine late-stage core forging pills, Uncle Master will have already advanced to the transcendence stage. If I continue to concoct pills, I will have to trouble Tianlu Laozu, the only alchemy grandmaster in our sect." When Zhu Xianmeng heard Lu Ping mention Tianlu Laozu, she immediately looked up at Lu Ping and saw that Lu Ping was also looking at her. Neither of them spoke, but it was as if they could see something in each other's eyes. Liang Xianfeng looked at the 2 of them with a trace of worry in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. After Lu Ping finished speaking, he said, "Uncle Master, I'll go and study this Zhongding pill first. No matter what, I have to give it a try. If I succeed by luck, and Uncle Master becomes the Transcendence Laozu in the future, I will also be able to cling to a big tree." Liang Xianfeng laughed and scolded, "Do you still need to cling to my thigh? You should think about what gift to prepare for your master's Dharma assembly first." In another practice room, after Lu Ping ordered everyone not to disturb him, he opened the golden house and went in. Chu Ting originally wanted to lend him her high-grade alchemy furnace and bright yellow fire seed, but Lu Ping politely declined. However, Lu Ping asked for some of the black powder that Chu Ting used to increase the power of the fire. On top of Lonely Mountain, Lu Ping had built a small house. Lu Qin and Wan Yu were flying up and down in the sky above the golden house. In the grass far away, there were 3 large snakes that were more than 30 meters long and as thick as water buckets playing. De Bao had long gone to open up his underground palace, and only De Gui was still loyal to Lu Ping. However, he was quite comfortable soaking in the mutated spirit pool. In the distance, Lu Qin and Wan Yu had made 2 nests on the branches of the peach blossom tree ant. The demonic aura on the peach blossom treant was getting thicker and thicker. The amount of spiritual energy it absorbed was already close to that of a late blood condensation cultivator. However, Lu Ping still hadn't found a cultivation technique that could be used to cultivate plants. The black powder Chu Ting gave Lu Ping was actually a type of powder made from a second-grade top-grade spirit material that was burned into charcoal. This kind of powder had a great effect on increasing the intensity and burst of fire. It was also a common method used in alchemy. For example, Wan Yu once used a piece of wudong wood to enhance the fire seed's power during the elixir gathering. Lu Ping looked at the peach blossom treant and took out 2 branches that fell from the peach blossom treant from his storage ring. Due to the influence of the psychic wood, these branches were genuine second-grade mutated spiritual materials. In the hands of a smithing master, they were treasures that could be turned into magic treasures. It was a waste to use them to make charcoal. However, it was worth it to use a small amount of them to exchange for a batch of important pills. The azure spiritual fire, the Na Chuan cauldron, the spirit explosion technique, the purification technique, the herb pestle, the charcoal, the amethyst royal jelly, the high-grade spirit stone, and the 2 sets of spiritual herbs that Lu Ping barely managed to gather to refine the bell cauldron pill. Lu Ping was taking a gamble. As long as he could refine 1 bell cauldron pill, he would be able to make up for perfected Liang Xuanfeng's damaged foundation. However, Lu Ping only had 5 to 6 days. Once the time was up, perfected Liang Xianfeng would have no hope of restoring his foundation. However, exchanging 2 sets of incomparably precious spiritual herbs for 1 bell cauldron pill was a wasteful act in the eyes of any cultivator. However, it was clear that Lu Ping did not have such an awareness. 5 to 6 days was only enough for Lu Ping to refine 2 batches of bell cauldron pill. Therefore, there was no need for Lu Ping to prepare the 3rd batch of spiritual herbs for the bell cauldron pill. This time, Lu Ping personally used the herb pestle to grind the spiritual herbs. He warmed the cauldron, opened the cauldron, added the herbs, controlled the fire, and melted the herbs. However, the heat of the flames was insufficient. It was not because the azure spiritual fire's grade was low, but because Lu Ping's water attribute cultivation technique could not fully unleash the power of the azure spiritual fire. The charcoal was scattered into the fire seed. The spirit fire rose and the melting was successful. The purification technique was still powerful and the entire process of refining the medicinal liquid was smooth. When condensing the pill, the medicinal liquid required a large amount of spiritual energy. However, at this time, a problem appeared. Lu Ping's abundant true essence was still sufficient. However, the process of condensing the pill required an explosive absorption of spiritual energy. Lu Ping's water attribute cultivation technique did not have enough time to switch. Even though Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique to explode 3 high-grade spirit stones in one go, it was still to no avail. The first batch of bell cauldron pill was a complete failure. Lu Ping's expression was emotionless. This was within his expectations. After all, the bell cauldron pill was too difficult to refine. Failure was normal. Success was actually a fluke. After recalling the entire process of refining the first batch of bell cauldron pill, Lu Ping recovered the true essence in his body. He adjusted himself to his best condition and began his second attempt to refine the bell cauldron pill. Warmed the cauldron, opened the cauldron, added the herbs, controlled the fire, and melted the herbs. The charcoal powder made from spiritual materials was scattered into the azure spiritual fire. The fire rose sharply and the medicinal liquid was successfully melted. Medicinal liquid purification. Lu Ping mobilized the true essence in his body and transformed it. Although a large amount of true essence was wasted, Lu Ping remained unmoved. The true essence in his body rapidly decreased. Success or failure depended on this one move. 6 high-grade spirit stones exploded. Lu Ping only had 2 high-grade spirit stones left. 4 liquid pills began to condense. Lu Ping decisively shattered 2 of them. The spiritual energy contained in them was quickly absorbed by the other 2 pills that were still in the process of condensing. 2 drops of viscous golden liquid exuding a strong floral fragrance fell into the cauldron. Under the control of Lu Ping's divine sense, they directly entered the 2 remaining pills. Purple crystal royal jelly. Lu Ping's divine sense wrapped around the 2 pills that were in the process of condensing. His divine sense was rapidly being consumed. Spiritual ignition. This was the last and most important step in refining pills above the core forging stage. Every pill above the core forging stage had its own spiritual nature. The higher the grade of the pill, the more difficult it was to refine. In addition to the spirit grass itself, the most important factor was the final process of making the pill's spiritual nature. One of the important purposes of core forging stage cultivation was to fuse the divine sense into the golden core, endow the golden core with a strong spiritual nature, and finally give birth to the Dharma idol. The higher the grade of the pill, the more spiritual nature it would have after refining it, and the greater the consumption of the alchemist's divine sense. Even with Lu Ping's divine sense cultivation, which was almost at the middle stage of the core forging stage, he still felt powerless against the consumption of divine sense. Of course, the most important reason was that Lu Ping's alchemy skills were shallow. He didn't have the slightest experience in refining such a high-grade pill, which resulted in a lot of waste. The consumption of divine sense caused Lu Ping's face to become paler and paler. More and more cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and he gradually felt dizzy. Lu Ping gritted his teeth unwillingly and once again shattered one of the solidifying pills. The burden on Lu Ping's divine sense was greatly reduced. Lu Ping endured the discomfort caused by the huge consumption of divine sense and waved his hand to open the alchemy furnace. A golden pill, like a bird released from its cage, quickly flew out of the furnace. Lu Ping tried to use his divine sense to capture the pill, but unfortunately, Lu Ping had no spare energy to stop the pill from escaping. A pill that was half a step to the Dharma idol had such a strong spiritual nature. However, if he allowed the pill to escape, not only would Lu Ping's previous efforts in refining the Zhongding pill be wasted, but after the pill escaped, it would be unable to maintain its own spiritual nature. In the end, it would lose its spiritual nature and its medicinal power would be lost. Just as the pellet was about to announce Lu Ping's failure in such a mocking manner, a jade essence bottle was already waiting outside for the pellet to escape from the alchemy hut. The moment the pellet left the hut, a jade essence bottle was already waiting for it. The door of the hut opened, and Luan Yu's shy face and long neck squeezed in through the gap. Looking at Lu Ping's somewhat dumbfounded face, Luan Yu laughed and said, "If I hadn't been attracted by the sound of your alchemy, would you have succeeded in refining the pill this time?" Lu Ping's head had just gotten rid of the splitting pain, but he was still dizzy. Hearing Luan Yu's words, he felt that it was ridiculous. He had calculated all the difficulties that he might encounter in refining the pill, but he had missed out on the simplest step. If this time, after the pill was out of the furnace, he was unable to keep the pill because of his lack of energy, causing the pill to lose its spiritual nature and medicinal power, he was afraid that he would become the biggest joke in the alchemy world. "I didn't expect your alchemy skills to have reached such a level." In the end, the shy and kind Luan Yu did not further attack Lu Ping and admitted Lu Ping's alchemy skills. At the same time, he sighed and said, "Why don't you come in?" Lu Ping regained some of his divine sense. Although his face was still pale, his mind was finally clear. He looked at Luan Yu, who opened the door so wide that only a head and a long neck could fit through. Lu Ping couldn't help but ask in annoyance. "This is the rule of alchemists," Luan Yu finally walked in this time and said, "Without the consent of an alchemist, you can't enter the alchemy room as you wish. How could you forget that I was afraid that you would kill me?" When Lu Ping appeared in front of perfected Liang Xianfeng with a pale face, there were several jade slips placed in front of perfected Liang Xianfeng. Perfected Liang Xianfeng was leisurely looking at the contents of one of the jade slips. When Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting, who were at the side, saw Lu Ping's appearance, they did not think that Lu Ping could create a miracle and their faces immediately darkened. "You're out." Perfected Liang Xianfeng greeted happily when he saw Lu Ping coming out. Come here quickly. I've definitely made a huge profit from this trip to the heavy mystery hall under the nose of Skyrend and the Crystal Palace. I'll give you a few jade slips to take a look and I guarantee that you'll be grateful. Lu Ping sighed. Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's state of mind was far from what he could compare to. If he became like this, he might resent the two people beside him. Lu Ping reached out and handed a jade essence bottle to Perfected Liang Xianfeng and said, Uncle Master, I only refined one. Chapter 306. As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting, who were behind him, suddenly raised their heads. Their faces were full of disbelief as they stared at Lu Ping's back with a hint of horror in their eyes. Perfected Liang Xianfeng looked at Lu Ping in a daze, then let out a laugh. Good lad, I didn't expect you to be able to do this. Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything. He saw a hint of surprise in Perfected Liang Xuanfeng's eyes. Come. Let's take a look at this jade scroll first. Perfected Liang Xianfeng put the Zhongding pill aside and handed a jade scroll to Lu Ping. Take a look at this first. Lu Ping saw that Perfected Liang Xianfeng was very serious about handing the jade scroll to him. He did not urge him to go into seclusion to refine the Zhongding pill to recover from his injuries. Instead, he took the jade scroll in his hand and read its contents. As soon as he touched the contents of the jade scroll, Lu Ping was shocked. He immediately looked up at Perfected Liang Xianfeng and only continued reading when he saw Perfected Liang Xianfeng nod. After a long time, Lu Ping looked at Perfected Liang Xianfeng solemnly. I didn't expect Uncle Master to have obtained this jade scroll. Now, I, Jinling, will have one more of the 5 true techniques. Perfected Liang Xianfeng laughed. It's not as simple as you make it out to be. To be able to become a true technique of our sect, other than perfecting it all the way to the late Dharma stage, the most important thing is for a cultivator to practice this technique and eventually reach the late Dharma stage. Jinling's Linhai wave listening technique was originally a legacy that Jinling had obtained from the failing sect when he participated in the extermination of the failing sect. However, this legacy was incomplete and could only be practiced to the Dharma stage. Later on, Jinling's successive generations of Laozu perfected it, but it could only be practiced to the mid-Dharma stage. As such, although the Linhai wave listening technique was Jinling's true technique, it could not be compared to the 5 true techniques. Although Lu Ping had a solemn expression on the surface, his heart was already overjoyed. The jade slip in his hand was the complete Linhai wave listening technique. As the saying goes, wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, but find it by chance without even looking for it. This time, Perfected Liang Xianfeng followed many cultivators into the heavy mystery palace. Relying on his flying ability, he rushed to Skyrend and the Crystal Palace and snatched several jade slips from under the noses of the cultivators of the 2 sections. Among them, the most important one was the complete Linhai wave listening technique. Liang Xianfeng said, legend has it that failing sect has 2 water attribute techniques. One is the Linhai wave listening technique, which is also the most widely spread water attribute technique in failing sect. The other one is rarely practiced. It's said that it's too violent and overbearing for ordinary cultivators to control. Moreover, after the core forging stage, every step forward is extremely difficult. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, but he pretended to be extremely interested and said, Uncle Master, what's the name of this technique? What's the difficulty in cultivating it? Perfected Liang Xianfeng shook his head and said, I don't know about that. When failing sect was destroyed back then, many of the famous techniques in the sect were either lost or divided by the various sects in the North Sea. Only this technique was missing. Although it's famous, it has never appeared in front of others. Lu Ping was a little disappointed, but Perfected Liang Xianfeng continued, with the complete Linhai wave listening technique, I believe it's only a matter of time before this technique becomes the 6th true technique of our sect. Perhaps it'll be realized by your master. Previously, perfected Liang Xianfeng had been intentionally or unintentionally avoiding something in front of Zhu Xianmeng. After seeing Chu Ting, he was even unwilling to mention it to Jinling. This time, when perfected Liang Xianfeng mentioned his master, Lu Ping smiled and asked, "Uncle Master mentioned that you want me to prepare a gift for the Dharma meeting for Master. I've been in East Sea for the past few years and haven't served Master. Has Master advanced to the Dharma stage?" When Zhu Xianmeng heard Lu Ping's words, her eyelids twitched, but she did not show any expression. Chu Ting, on the other hand, looked surprised. Obviously, Lu Ping had a master who was about to become Dharma Laozu. Perfected Liang Xianfeng unintentionally glanced at Zhu Xianmeng, but it did not escape Lu Ping's eyes. He heard perfected Liang Xianfeng say, "Your master has already condensed the third heaven and earth spiritual item and achieved a high-grade golden elixir. Advancing to the Dharma stage is almost a matter of time. When that time comes, I, Jinling, will have the 9th Dharma Laozu." Perfected Liang Xianfeng refined the Bell Cauldron elixir to recover from his injuries and at the same time, replenish the damaged foundation of his body. He temporarily went into seclusion in this inn. Before he went into seclusion, perfected Liang Xianfeng gave Lu Ping a jade scroll. On it was recorded the 18 Merry Swords, one of the Xianling sect's signature sword techniques that Lu Ping had asked him for. Although this sword technique was of the wind attribute and was incompatible with Lu Ping's cultivation method, this sword technique was broad and profound. Although it only had the cultivation method of the artistic conception, there was no higher-level cultivation method of swordsmanship. However, the essence of swordsmanship contained in it was enough for Lu Ping to use as a reference. While Lu Ping was studying swordsmanship, the situation in the East Sea changed greatly. The confrontation between the human and demon cultivators in the East Sea became more and more intense. The reason was that after the opening of the Zhongxian cave, the demon cultivators ambushed Skyrend, the Crystal Palace and a group of mysterious female cultivators outside the Zhongxian cave, causing 7 human core forging cultivators to fall. Among them, 3 were from the Crystal Palace, 2 each from Skyrend and the group of mysterious female cultivators. At the same time, when the demon race cultivators sent cultivators into the profound immortal cave to plunder the treasures, they also destroyed the great array of the immortal cave. If not for a mysterious cultivator seeing through it, the core forging cultivators in the immortal cave would have been wiped out. Even so, after the great array of the immortal cave collapsed, nearly 20 core forging cultivators died, and more than 10 cultivators were seriously injured. Just after the uproar in the East Sea, the news came that the Crystal Palace had issued a wanted order for a mysterious cultivator force called Boudoir in the East Sea. The special thing about this force was that most of the cultivators in this force were female cultivators. This made the cultivators in the East Sea immediately connect the Boudoir with the group of mysterious female cultivators who were also ambushed by the demon clan. At the same time, the Crystal Palace also issued a wanted order for a late-stage core forging cultivator who cultivated the wind attribute. However, after the Crystal Palace announced the wanted order for the Boudoir, a rumor once again spread among the cultivators in the East Sea. After the opening of the Zhongxian cave, 5 people from the Crystal Palace died in the cave. 4 of them were ambushed by the Boudoir. The East Sea was shocked again. 8 core forging cultivators died in a row. Even the powerful Crystal Palace couldn't bear it. No wonder the Crystal Palace issued a wanted order for the Boudoir cultivators to be killed in the entire East Sea. At the same time, news came from the Crystal Palace. This time, the Crystal Palace obtained 2 of the 4 treasures of Zhongxian in the Zhongxian cave, the magic treasure Zhongxian furnace and the earth-rank high-rank purple fire. After the purple fire was ambushed, it was taken away by the demon clan cultivators. However, the other 2 of the 4 treasures of Zhongxian that people were concerned about were not obtained by the Sky-Breaking Sword sect. This time, the Sky-Breaking Sword sect had opened the storage room of the residents of Zhongxian and obtained a large amount of spiritual materials. Among them, there was no lack of top-grade spiritual materials of 2nd and 3rd grade, and a few magical treasures made by Patriarch Zhongxian. When the East Sea cultivators were guessing who got the other two treasures, the Crystal Palace released another news that Laozu of Zhongxian had a space celestial device which was used to open up a spiritual herb garden, and the other two treasures should be in it. For cultivators of the Crystal Palace had found this space celestial device, but they were killed by the cultivators of the boudoir, and the space celestial device was taken away. The mysterious boudoir, beautiful female cultivators, space celestial device, the spiritual herb garden that no one had cared about for thousands of years, skywind leaves, xianyuan heavy water, and the wanted reward of the Crystal Palace. For a while, the boudoir became the focus of the East Sea cultivators. Several organizations of female cultivators in the East Sea were attacked, and many female cultivators disappeared, died, or were kidnapped. Some of them might be members of the boudoir, but most of them were robbed. When the boudoir was being attacked by the Crystal Palace, the demon cultivators launched another attack on the humans of the East Sea. The snake demons of the East Sea attacked the Shengguan family, a rising medium-sized force under the jurisdiction of the Northern Alliance. The Drum Bell Island where the family was located was slaughtered by the snake demons, and only an heir of the family named Shengguan Hao escaped. When the news came, the East Sea was shocked again. If the demon cultivators ambushed the human cultivators in the cave of Zhongxian were for the treasures, then this time the snake demons attacked the Drum Bell Island and slaughtered the Shengguan family. It was a provocation to the human cultivators. After hearing the name of Shengguan Hao from Chu Ting, Lu Ping suddenly thought of the masked cultivator in linen clothes who attacked him on the way back from the listening small building. Could it be Shengguan Hao? Because of him, the Shengguan family not only lost Yu Jiangrui, the alchemist who was the best alchemist in the Northern Alliance, but also had to compensate the Li family with a spiritual mine. Li Xiuzhu, whom Shengguan Hao had always admired, was completely hopeless. Shengguan Hao had every reason to kill him. But why did the snake demons attack the Drum Bell Island? Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. Was it because of the three spirits? Lu Ping shook his head. Obviously, Shengguan Hao did not recognize the identity of Samling's green sea snake. Otherwise, the snake demons would not have slaughtered the entire Drum Bell Island. The news that he had the green sea snake was probably already known by everyone. So, there should be someone who was present on the day of the robbery, and this person might be a demon cultivator who knew the green sea snake. However, because of the formation, no one could see what was going on inside. Shengguan Hao's cultivation was the highest, and Lu Ping himself had used a pill to cut off his scent and other tracking clues. The demon race mistakenly thought that the green sea snake was with him. Lu Ping speculated about what happened at that time. Now he was worried that Shengguan Hao would recover from the disaster and spread the news that he had the green sea snake. Then, the cultivator who was being chased by the snake demons in the East Sea would probably be himself. Chu Ting, who was on the side, saw that Lu Ping was distracted. She frowned and said, "This time, the demon race suddenly attacked, and the situation in the East Sea is in chaos. It is a good opportunity for us. The plan to expel the Wang family from the fallen secret land must be carried out in advance." Chapter 307. Hearing Chu Ting's words, Lu Ping looked at her strangely and said, "Now the situation of the boudoir is not very good. If they do it again in the fallen mystery land, aren't they afraid that they will become the target of public criticism?" Chu Ting said confidently, "Don't worry. Now the situation between humans and demons in the East Sea is getting more and more serious. Many cultivators have been in constant conflict with the demon cultivators in the outer sea. Small-scale fights are everywhere. The boudoir hides deeper than you think. Once the war between humans and demons breaks out, the top priority is to unite all the human cultivators to fight against the demons. If not, the Crystal Palace will not destroy themselves. At that time, the boudoir can take advantage of the situation and establish their own sect. It is not impossible for them to become the sixth sect in the East Sea." Lu Ping was a little speechless. But from Chu Ting's words, he could tell that the boudoir was much stronger than he had imagined. If the boudoir really took advantage of the war between the human and monster races and made great contributions in the war, the 5 great sects wouldn't have an excuse to join forces to destroy the boudoir after the war. However, it was inevitable that the boudoir would be suppressed. Of course, the premise of all this was that the boudoir had enough power to protect itself. Obviously, Chu Ting believed that the boudoir had this power. What about the Northern Alliance? Lu Ping asked. After all, nominally, the Wang family is still one of the 36 medium-sized forces belonging to the Northern Alliance. If we act rashly and alarm the Northern Alliance, we will lose more than we gain. The Northern Alliance and our boudoir have been in contact for a long time. What's more, it is no secret that the Wang family defected to the Crystal Palace. It is just that the Northern Alliance and the Crystal Palace have their own scruples, and no one is willing to fall out with each other. At this time, if we jump out and become the spear of the Northern Alliance, according to the rules of the Northern Alliance, we can challenge the Wang family's position in the Northern Alliance. The Northern Alliance will be more than happy to do that. Besides, this time, you are the nominal leader, and it has nothing to do with my boudoir. For the sake of your alchemy master, the Northern Alliance will not make things too difficult for us. Since I'm here, how can my faction compete with the Wang family? If I expel the Wang family, will this faction still be under my control? This was what Lu Ping was concerned about. After all, the Wang clan of the 3 Clans Island had 4 enlightened masters. With Lu Ping's experience on Soundwave Island, he was far from a match for them. Even with Qi Lianying, there were only 2 enlightened masters. Moreover, they were only at the first layer of the core forging realm. How could they be a match for the Wang clan that had been operating for hundreds of years? Even if Lu Ping had the help of the boudoir and the Li family, and won with the consent of the Northern Alliance, how could the force that helped Lu Ping be under Lu Ping's control? Brother Lu, you're not from the Eastern Sea after all. You'll have to leave the Eastern Sea sooner or later. As long as you expel the Wang clan, even if this faction changes hands, you'll still be able to make a profit. Chu Ting's words were very clear. This was not Lu Ping's base. Lu Ping was only a spokesperson of the boudoir. After everything was over, Lu Ping could leave with the benefits, but the boudoir of the Wang clan would never let go of the fallen mystery land. How much do you know about your teacher, Miss Chu? Lu Ping changed the topic. I know what you're going to say, Brother Lu. Chu Ting picked up the spiritual tea beside her and took a sip. She continued, Teacher might be closely related to your sect, but he has left the Northern Sea and is now one of the elders in charge of the boudoir. My younger sister is also one of the 24 pavilion masters of the boudoir. My younger sister naturally takes the boudoir as her foothold when she does things. I believe that teacher is the same. Miss Chu, are you so sure that you won't be able to do it once you leave the boudoir? Lu Ping asked unhurriedly. He then said, the boudoir can provide help, and the benefits can be distributed, but the force must be under my control. Once it's done, the experts of the boudoir will immediately leave. Chu Ting looked into Lu Ping's eyes and asked, Brother Lu, are you so confident that you can still hold on to the territory after the boudoir leaves? Even Uncle Master Liang Xianfeng can't stay in the fallen mystery land forever, right? Lu Ping looked at Chu Ting and smiled. Maybe we don't need the boudoir to do anything. We can also expel the Wang clan, but it might take a little longer. Since they could expel the Wang clan, they could naturally defend it. Perfected Liang Xianfeng had been in seclusion for more than a month. Logically speaking, he should have already refined the Bell Cauldron pill and recovered his foundation. Just as Lu Ping was wondering if there would be any changes, he felt the spiritual qi in the surroundings suddenly become restless and slowly flowed towards perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation room. Lu Ping was overjoyed and quickly walked towards perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation room. Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting obviously also noticed the change in perfected Liang Xuanfeng's cultivation room. Not long after Lu Ping arrived, they also rushed over. Perfected Liang Xianfeng had clearly encountered an opportunity to break through. Breaking through from the 8th to the 9th stage of the core forging realm was not like breaking through from the blood condensation realm to the core forging realm, or from the early stage to the late stage of the core forging realm. This was a natural process of breaking through with the accumulation of true essence. However, perfected Liang Xianfeng was, after all, a late-stage core forging cultivator. Although there was no accompanying celestial phenomenon during the breakthrough, the amount of spiritual qi he absorbed during the breakthrough was still shocking. But soon, Lu Ping and the others felt that something was wrong. Although the Silver Sword Island was one of the 3 large islands of Skyrend, it wasn't Skyrend's territory. There was only a medium-sized spirit vein on the island, and it had been collected by the cultivators of Skyrend who were stationed on the island. The concentration of spiritual qi in the market where Lu Ping and the others were was only equivalent to that of a miniature spirit vein. When perfected Liang Xianfeng broke through, he attracted all the spiritual qi within the range of his spiritual sense. Although spiritual qi from further away was replenishing it, the speed at which it was replenished was still slower than the speed at which he absorbed it. At this moment, a spiritual qi vacuum had formed around Lu Ping and the others. This kind of opportunity for a cultivator to break through was like an epiphany. It was something that could only be found by chance. If perfected Liang Xianfeng didn't seize this opportunity to break through to the 9th stage of the core forging realm, he didn't know when he would get another opportunity. At this moment, the sound of spirit stones shattering could be heard in the cultivation room. Clearly, perfected Liang Xianfeng also realized that this was a rare opportunity. He decided to take a gamble and started using the method of directly shattering spirit stones to extract spiritual qi. Although this method was extremely wasteful, it was worth it if he could break through. Lu Ping's heart thumped and his divine sense swept into the cultivation room. Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting frowned. It was a taboo to disturb a cultivator during a breakthrough. The two of them wanted to stop Lu Ping, but they remembered that he wasn't an impulsive person. Maybe he had thought of something, so they didn't say anything. Perfected Liang Xianfeng obviously had the same thought as the two of them. When he sensed that Lu Ping's spiritual sense had entered the cultivation room, he thought for a moment and didn't stop him. When Lu Ping's spiritual sense entered the cultivation room, he noticed that perfected Liang Xianfeng was about to shatter the dozens of mid-grade spirit stones in his hand. Thus, he wrapped them with his spiritual sense and used the spirit explosion technique. A wave of spiritual qi that was far purer and gentler than before exploded and went directly into perfected Liang Xuanfeng's body. Enlightened Master Liang Xuanfeng's expression turned serious. With a thought, the floor of the cultivation room was covered with a layer of spirit stones. Lu Ping took a quick look and found that there were at least 4,000 to 5,000 mid-grade spirit stones, not to mention low-grade spirit stones. In the middle, there were about 20 to 30 large, crystal-clear high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping wrapped 100 mid-grade spirit stones with his spiritual sense and used the spirit explosion technique again. A small spiritual qi storm appeared in the cultivation room and formed a shallow spiritual qi vortex around perfected Liang Xuanfeng's body. Lu Ping didn't dare to be negligent. He used the spirit explosion technique one after another. Each time, he used 100 mid-grade spirit stones. After more than 40 times, he exploded all the mid-grade spirit stones on the ground and crushed thousands of low-grade spirit stones as well. The ground was covered with the remains of spirit stones that had turned into white powder. Although this still caused a lot of waste, it was many times better than simply crushing the spirit stones. At the very least, the situation of perfected Liang Xuanfeng's breakthrough was getting better. The aura around his body was also getting stronger. It was as if his entire body was covered by a gust of wind and he was about to turn into a feather and ascend to the sky. Lu Ping looked at the 28 high-grade spirit stones on the ground covetously, but he didn't hesitate at all. This was the critical moment for perfected Liang Xuanfeng's breakthrough. Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique on 3 of the high-grade spirit stones and exploded them. A spiritual qi that was far denser than before fused with perfected Liang Xianfeng, who was about to turn into wind. Lu Ping used the spirit explosion technique 7 times again. Only 4 of the 28 high-grade spirit stones were left. Perfected Liang Xianfeng, who seemed to be floating in the breeze, finally became a perfected person again. A burst of pressure flashed past. It was obvious that perfected Liang Xianfeng had quickly adapted to the enhanced spiritual force and true essence after his breakthrough. In an instant, he regained control of his spiritual force. Then, perfected Liang Xianfeng opened his eyes and looked at the layer of spirit stone powder on the ground. The corners of his mouth twitched. Seeing that Lu Ping's spiritual force was about to use the spirit explosion technique on the 3 high-grade spirit stones again, perfected Liang Xianfeng said anxiously, "Enough, enough. This is the last bit of your Uncle Master's wealth." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Uncle Master, you've just broken through. Don't you need to consolidate your cultivation?" Perfected Liang Xianfeng reached out and put the remaining 4 high-grade spirit stones into his storage artifact. He said, "Anyway, I've already broken through. Without your secret technique to explode spirit stones, I'll just have to go into seclusion for a few more days. I'd better save these spirit stones." Half a month later, perfected Liang Xianfeng came out of the cultivation room and saw Lu Ping waiting for him at the door with a smile. Seeing that perfected Liang Xianfeng had come out of seclusion, Lu Ping smiled and said, "Congratulations on your great progress in cultivation, Uncle Master. You're one step closer to becoming our sect's Dharma form Laozu." Perfected Liang Xianfeng did not suspect anything. He was excited and said, "It's all thanks to the Zhongding pill you refined. Your Uncle Master has long reached the point of breaking through to the 9th stage of the core forging realm. Unfortunately, I failed several times before. This time, with the help of the Zhongding pill, I finally broke through this shackle." Lu Ping sighed and said, "That's right. I've suffered a great loss to refine the Zhongding pill this time. I've lost nearly 100 types of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs and 7 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, but I only managed to refine 1 Zhongding pill. I even lost 20 high-grade spirit stones because of it." Lu Ping deliberately mentioned the high-grade spirit stones at the end, doubling the number of losses. Perfected Liang Xianfeng had a strange look on his face. How could he not know what Lu Ping was planning? He said, "Kid, don't even think about taking the spirit stones. As you can see, your Uncle Master is now penniless. I only have those 4 high-grade spirit stones left." Lu Ping chuckled and stepped forward. "Martial Uncle, I'm sure you still have some spirit stones left, right? I don't believe that a famous late core forging realm expert like you only has less than 1,000,000 spirit stones. I won't take it for free, how about I trade with you? I only want high-grade spirit stones." Chapter 308. After hearing Lu Ping's words, perfected Liang Xianfeng said angrily, "Kid, what do you know? At my level, things like hundreds of thousands of spirit stones are easy to get. What's really useful are the things that can't be bought with spirit stones. Are you saying that the value of the spirit stones on you is higher than the value of other cultivation items?" Lu Ping smiled embarrassedly and thought to himself, "Of course not. I have 5 heaven and earth spiritual items on me. None of them can be measured by spirit stones. As for the other top-grade spiritual materials, there's no need to mention them." Perfected Liang Xianfeng flipped his hand and took out 10 superior-grade spirit stones. "That's all I have. I don't have any more." Lu Ping chuckled and took the spirit stones from perfected Liang Xianfeng's hand. This time, Lu Ping had really suffered a heavy loss in order to refine the Bell Cauldron pill. Lu Ping was asking perfected Liang Xianfeng some questions about cultivation when he heard someone say from outside, "I'm a disciple of Skyrend. May I see fellow cultivator in the inn?" Perfected Liang Xianfeng smiled and said, "It seems that my cultivation breakthrough this time has caused quite a commotion. It seems that Skyren didn't have any bad intentions by only coming to check up now. Lu Ping rolled his eyes when he heard that and thought to himself, although your cultivation breakthrough didn't cause a celestial phenomenon, how many people would notice that the spirit chi within a few miles was swept away? What's more, although the pressure of your divine sense disappeared in a flash, it was a real aura of a late-stage core forging cultivator. Which cultivator would dare to disturb you in advance? By the time the two left, Chu Ting and Zhu Xianmeng had already sent away Skyren's disciple. Seeing that Liang Xianfeng had come out of seclusion, they handed him a bright red invitation. Oh, it's a trade fair organized by the Sky Fisher Sword sect on Silver Sword Island. Reverend Liang Xianfeng glanced at the contents and said, this Silver Sword Island sure knows how to pick a good time. When the Profound Heavens abode opened, many cultivators had benefited from it. Even now, there are still cultivators diving deep into the ocean to explore the ruins of the Profound Heavens abode. Many cultivators have also settled down on Silver Sword Island. This is the perfect time for the Sky Fisher Sword sect to gather some core forging cultivators and organize a barter trade fair. 3 days later, Lu Ping, Zhu Xianmeng, and Chu Ting followed perfected Liang Xianfeng to a tea house operated by Skyrend. The four of them walked up to the tea house, and a cultivator from the Sky Fisher Sword sect welcomed them with a smile. It's our honor to have you here, fellow Taoist. May I ask your name? This cultivator from Skyrend was a mid-stage core forging cultivator. Although he looked amiable on the surface, Lu Ping could still feel a vigorous and sharp power from him. Perfected Liang Xianfeng handed over the invitation and greeted them with cupped fists. I don't dare. My surname is Liang. Then he turned around and pointed at Zhu Xianmeng and the others. These are our juniors. They want to see the world. Please forgive us for taking the liberty to come. The Sky-Breaking Sword sect cultivator saw that Lu Ping and the others were all in the core forging realm, and enlightened Master Liang Xianfeng was a 9th-layer core forging realm expert. He didn't dare to slight them, so he quickly said, it's fine. I'm very envious of the three of you for reaching such a high cultivation level at such a young age. Please come in and have some tea, there are still a few more who have yet to arrive. Under the guidance of a boy, the four of them came to a rather large quiet room. A waiter served them high-grade spirit tea and the four of them sat down. There were already several perfected masters in the quiet room. When they saw the four of them, especially perfected Liang Xuanfeng's 9th stage core forging cultivation, the cultivators in the quiet room nodded to show their goodwill. Perfected Liang Xianfeng also smiled. After another half an hour, several more perfected masters arrived. Only then did Lu Ping notice that all the cultivators attending the trade fair were at least mid-stage core forging. No wonder perfected Liang Xianfeng specially explained it to perfected Master Skyrend at the entrance. At this time, there were nearly 30 cultivators in the quiet room. Among them, nearly 10 were late-stage perfected masters, and the rest were at 5th stage or 6th stage core forging. There were almost no 4th stage core forging cultivators like Zhu Xianmeng. As for 1st stage core forging cultivators like Lu Ping and Chu Ting, they were the only ones present. The two of them became the center of attention in the quiet room. If it wasn't for perfected Master Liang Xianfeng, who was a 9th stage core forging expert, holding the fort, the two of them might have met with misfortune. Just as Lu Ping was deep in thought, the cultivator who greeted them at the entrance of the stairs came in. He made a square salute and said, "Hee, almost everyone is here. Thank you all for coming to participate in this barter trade fair. My surname is Jean, and I'm the shopkeeper of this tea house. 2 more senior brothers from my sect came to participate in this trade fair. They are senior brother Ming Jian and senior brother Huang Tingjian." As soon as perfected Master Jean finished speaking, 2 cultivators with huge swords on their backs walked in from behind the quiet room. There were already people behind the quiet room? This was clearly out of the perfected Master's expectations. Except for perfected Master Liang Xianfeng, who seemed to have sensed it earlier, the way everyone looked at the two suddenly changed. When Lu Ping probed with his divine sense, he immediately felt that the two of them were filled with sharp qi, as if they wanted to cut Lu Ping's divine sense apart. Lu Ping could only see that the two of them were late-stage core forging cultivators. He hurriedly retracted his divine sense, only to discover that he wasn't the only one. Many other cultivators had also noticed this, and their faces turned ugly. Perfected Master Jean acted as if he didn't see the expressions on everyone's faces. He smiled and continued, "The two senior brothers have gained a lot from the heavy Xian cave. I hope we can get what we need from this trade." As soon as Daoist Jean finished speaking, the eyes of all the cultivators lit up. Everyone knew that the Crystal Palace and Sky Fisher Sword faction had obtained the greatest benefits from the appearance of the Profound Immortal's abode. Sky Fisher Sword faction had even cleaned out Patriarch Profound's storage room, obtaining an uncountable number of spiritual materials, magic artifacts, and magic treasures. The legacy jade slips inside the Profound Immortal's Grand Hall had also been divided with Sky Fisher Sword faction. Clearly, these two cultivators who had participated in the trade fair had gained a lot. At this moment, Perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's words suddenly sounded in the ears of Lu Ping and the other two. He said, "Don't reveal your gains from the heavy Xian cave unless it's necessary." Before Lu Ping could think about the meaning of Perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's words, he saw Skyren's Perfected Master Ming Jian smile and say, "Since this trade fair is led by me, Skyren, I'll be the first one to make a move." As soon as Perfected Master Ming Jian finished speaking, a black iron block the size of a head appeared in his hand. He said, "This is a mutated second-class top-tier spiritual material, green hell iron from the heavy Xian cave. It's a top-tier spiritual material for making metal attribute magic treasures. I'm willing to exchange it with everyone here for a mutated wood attribute spiritual material of the same grade." Although this piece of green hell iron was only the size of a head, it actually weighed more than 500 kilograms. It was so light in Perfected Master Ming Jian's hand. Perhaps a second-class mutated top-tier spiritual material was just a good item in the eyes of the Perfected Masters. However, this was Perfected Master Ming Jian's first time making a move. He had set a tone: if the items that the Perfected Masters used to trade were not as good as this piece of green hell iron, they should not bring it out to embarrass themselves. Lu Ping did have a mutated wood attribute spiritual material, but Lu Ping's green hell iron was useless. Moreover, he was not proficient in smithing. At this moment, a long-bearded Perfected Master sitting opposite Lu Ping said with a smile, "Daoist brother Ming Jian, you're really generous. You've set the standard so high. The old man should exchange for something first. Otherwise, when everyone's treasures are revealed one by one, the old man will only be able to look at them enviously. He won't have enough bargaining chips." Perfected Master Ming Jian glanced at the old man and said with a smile, "So it's Daoist brother Mu. You must be joking. The Mu family is a famous cultivator family in the East Sea. How could they be lacking in treasures? However, I wonder what kind of wood attribute spiritual material Daoist brother is holding." Perfected Master Mu stretched out his hand and took out a lump of wood. Perfected Master Ming Jian's eyes lit up as if two sharp swords were shooting at the lump of wood in Perfected Master Mu's hand. He said, "It's actually the heart of a 1,000-year-old locust tree. It's indeed a second-class spiritual material, but it's a lot smaller. I'm at a disadvantage if I exchange it with this piece of green hell iron." Perfected Master Mu waved his hand and said, "Daoist brother Ming Jian, look carefully. This isn't an ordinary 1,000-year-old locust tree heart. The growth rings of this locust tree heart have already reached 1,500 years old. It's a top-grade tree heart. It's enough to exchange for this piece of green hell iron." "Oh." After hearing Perfected Master Mu's explanation, Perfected Master Ming Jian stretched out his hand and beckoned. The lump of wood flew towards Perfected Master Ming Jian. Perfected Master Mu didn't stop it. He just watched Perfected Master Ming Jian carefully examine the lump of wood in his hand with a smile. After a moment, Perfected Master Ming Jian nodded and said with satisfaction, "It's indeed a 1,500-year-old locust tree heart. I'll exchange it. Please keep this piece of green hell iron. Next, several perfected masters took out the treasures they didn't need and exchanged them for the things they needed, just like in a treasure competition. All kinds of spiritual materials, magic treasures, strange magic tools, medicinal pills, cultivation methods, and jade slips emerged one after another. It was an eye-opener for Lu Ping. Originally, Lu Ping thought that the many treasures he had on him were already considered extremely wealthy among the core forging realm cultivators. But now, compared to these middle and late-stage core forging realm cultivators, he was undoubtedly a frog in the well. Just as Lu Ping was appreciating all kinds of rare treasures and listening to the cultivator's evaluation of these treasures, a fourth-layer core forging realm female cultivator with the same cultivation level as Zhu Xianmeng stood up and said, "This little girl's wealth isn't comparable to yours. I only have this bowl of spirit water. I want to exchange it for 23,000-year-old spiritual herbs." As soon as the female cultivator's voice fell, everyone exclaimed in surprise. Even perfected Master Liang Xianfeng and perfected Master Huang Tingjian, who were sitting at the side with their eyes closed, suddenly opened their eyes and glanced at the water bowl in the female cultivator's hand. Jade nectar clear water. I can't believe it's this thing. Lu Ping looked at the bowl of spirit water in the female cultivator's hand. His expression didn't change, but his mind was already spinning. 23,000-year-old spiritual herbs is not a small amount. Can Fairy Sun lower the price? One of the impatient cultivators asked. Jade nectar clear water was a natural treasure of the water attribute. Together with fine nectar clear water, it was known as one of the two great treasures of the world. It was extremely important for cultivators to quickly recover their true essence and injuries. More importantly, these two treasures were essential for cultivators to cultivate various small water attribute magical abilities, including the small magical ability that Lu Ping had cultivated to the first stage, the three pure one's true pupils. Chapter 309. When the female practitioner heard the discussion, she said impatiently, "I have already said that I am willing to exchange this item for 23,000-year-old spirit herbs." A cultivator beside the female cultivator said, "Fairy Sun, you must be joking. 23-year-old spirit herbs are enough to make half a furnace of pure Dharma elixirs. From what I know, most of the elixirs that Dharma ancestors use now are made with 3,000-year-old spirit herbs as a primer. Then, they use large amounts of 1,000-year-old spirit herbs to make elixirs that are half a step into the Dharma stage. Fairy Sun wants 23,000-year-old spirit herbs, but this small bowl of spirit water is not enough." Fairy Sun's expression did not change. She said, "Oh, then how many spirit herbs does Spiritual Master Gao think you can get?" Spiritual Master Gao was happy to hear this. He knew that there was room for negotiation, so he said, "I have 4 3,000-year-old spirit herbs." Fairy Sun's expression changed. Spiritual Master Gao saw this and quickly said, "Of course, I have 10,000-year-old spirit herbs to supplement." Lu Ping couldn't help but curl his lips. How could a 3,000-year spirit herb be compared to a 1,000-year spirit herb? A single 3,000-year spirit herb was worth more than 10 1,000-year spirit herbs. Yet, this enlightened Master Gao's offer was only equivalent to 5 3,000-year spirit herbs, which was more than half of enlightened Master Sun's offer. Sure enough, before Fairy Sun could react, another spiritual master laughed and said, "Spiritual Master Gao's joke is too much. 10,000-year-old spirit herbs for one 3,000-year-old spirit herb depends on whether the other party is happy or not. Although I am not talented, I am willing to use 8 3,000-year-old spirit herbs and 100,000-year-old spirit herbs to exchange for Fairy Sun's spirit water." Spiritual Master Gao's expression became angry, but he couldn't blame anyone else. He could only blame himself for lowering the price too much and being looked down upon by others. At this time, Skyren's Jin Jinren also interrupted, "Haha, I didn't think that Fairy Sun's spirit water would be so popular. I am also very envious. I am also willing to use 10 3,000-year-old spirit herbs to exchange for it, and 150,000-year-old spirit herbs." When Taoist Jin spoke, everyone's expression changed again. They didn't know if this was Skyren's intention. Just as the Taoist Jin was about to speak, someone else said, I offer 12 3,000-year-old herbs. The enlightened master was startled. He turned around and saw a young cultivator at the first layer of the core forging realm. The enlightened master was displeased. He thought to himself that an early core forging minor repairs cultivator had come to take a look. Naturally, others wouldn't say anything, but if they interfered in the transaction, then it wouldn't be right. Just as he was about to reprimand the young cultivator, he saw perfected Liang Xianfeng resting with his eyes closed. Only then did he remember that perfected Liang Xianfeng was a 9th-layer core forging expert. He immediately swallowed his anger. This perfected person did not speak, but that did not mean that others would be polite to Lu Ping. Taoist Master Gao, who had just been humiliated, saw that it was only an early-stage core forging cultivator who was bidding. He immediately sneered and said, Whose child is this? Is there any place for you to speak? 12 3,000-year-old herbs. How arrogant! Perfected Liang Xianfeng, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Taoist Master Gao. Just as perfected Liang Xianfeng opened his eyes, perfected Skyren, perfected Huang Tingjian, also opened his eyes. He looked at perfected Liang Xianfeng, but then he looked at Lu Ping. Are you talking about me? Perfected Liang Xianfeng looked at Taoist Master Gao and asked softly. His expression was indifferent, but his voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears, causing the entire pavilion to become incomparably silent. Taoist Master Gao's heart skipped a beat when he saw perfected Liang Xuanfeng's gaze on him. Immediately after, perfected Liang Xuanfeng's voice sounded like a gentle breeze. Taoist Master Gao's mind was in chaos. Then, a divine sense slashed at him like a sharp blade, completely cutting off the breeze. Perfected Liang Xianfeng raised his head and looked at perfected Huang Tingjian. He didn't say anything else. Taoist Master Gao's expression changed greatly. He looked at perfected Liang Xianfeng with fear, then looked at Skyren and the other 3 perfected masters, and said, Taoist Jin, are early-stage core forging minor repairs allowed to participate in this trade fair? How could I not know? Fairy Sun secretly scolded Taoist Master Gao for being a busybody. Even Skyren's cultivators didn't stop Lu Ping from bidding. It was clear that even Skyren had to give face to the 9th-stage core forging cultivator next to Lu Ping. If Taoist Master Gao messed things up, wouldn't she lose her spirit water? Fairy Sun wasn't the only one who scolded Taoist Master Gao for being a busybody. Taoist Jin also frowned. However, he still had to uphold Skyren's rules. Thus, he said, this trade fair has indeed only invited cultivators above the middle stage of core forging, but, Taoist Jin dragged out the word, but, as if he was looking for a reason to deal with Taoist Master Gao without offending perfected Master Liang. Although Skyren had a large business, it hadn't reached the point where it would make enemies everywhere. But this Lu Xiaoyu isn't an ordinary early-stage core forging cultivator, said perfected Master Huang Tingjian. The one who spoke was enlightened Master Huang Tingjian, who was seated at the head of the table. He originally didn't plan on attending the trade fair, but because enlightened Master Jin had reported to him that there was a 9th-layer core forging expert among the invited cultivators, he decided to step forward. As the host, the cultivators of the Sky Fisher Sword sect couldn't show weakness in front of outsiders. Perfected Master Huang Tingjian opened his mouth, but Taoist Jin let out a long sigh of relief. Taoist Sun then said, Oh, Taoist Huang knows this young friend? May I ask what's different about him? Perfected Master Huang Tingjian asked solemnly, May I ask if this young friend is the 4th-place alchemist Lu Jiao of the Northern Alliance Elixir Gathering? As soon as perfected Master Huang Tingjian said this, all the cultivators present were stunned. Most of the cultivators present were core members of their respective forces. The Northern Alliance Elixir Gathering was a major event during the Northern Alliance's celebration. It was related to the growth of young alchemists, so these forces naturally had to pay attention to it. At the same time, these perfected masters had also heard of the outstanding alchemists in the elixir gathering. After all, these alchemists could become great alchemists in the future, or even great alchemists. Lu Ping did not dare to slight this perfected master Huang Tingjian. The feeling this perfected master gave Lu Ping was not inferior to perfected master Liang Xianfeng, so he said respectfully, "This junior is Lu Jiu." Seeing that Lu Ping was polite, perfected master Huang Tingjian nodded and said, "Lu Xiaoyu is now an alchemist master, right?" After all, after martial nephew Wei formed his gold core, he successfully refined a core forging level pill. Even martial nephew Wei admires Lu Xiaoyu's alchemy skills. This martial nephew Wei was Skyren's alchemist who had followed perfected master Ji Yaoyue to the elixir gathering. Lu Ping replied, "Brother Wei, you flatter me. This junior was lucky enough to refine a gold core pill." Zhu Xianmeng and Chu Ting secretly curled their lips. Lu Ping could even refine a Zhongding pill, a top-grade pill that was mixed with 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. In front of a Zhongding pill, a gold core pill could only be thrown away. However, when the other cultivators in the quiet room heard Lu Ping's words, their expressions changed again. This was a newly promoted alchemist master, and he was so young. He had a bright future ahead of him. Fairy Sun immediately said, "Since Lu Xiaoyu is already an alchemist master, he can naturally participate in this trade fair." Everyone echoed, saying, "If even alchemist masters can't participate, then there's no reason for it." Only perfected Master Gao's face was red. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling, but he couldn't do anything. He wanted to leave, but he was afraid of Skyren's face. His eyes were filled with resentment as he looked at Lu Ping, then at Fairy Sunday. At this time, perfected Master Jean took out a jade box from his spatial magic tool and said, "Although Master Lu has offered a high price, this jade elixir clear water is indeed very useful to me. I might have to pay a bit of my own capital. Here are 12 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. I will add on the 150,000-year-old spiritual herbs from before. I offer 14 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs." The one who spoke was the cultivator who had previously ridiculed perfected Master Gao. Lu Ping was also weighing the pros and cons. Lu Ping really didn't want to miss out on this jade elixir clear water. Although he had a lot of 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in his possession, he couldn't let others earn them so easily. Besides, this bowl of water was different from the spirit clear water from before. It was enough for 2 people to cleanse their eyes, but this bowl of water was only enough for 1 person, Lu Ping. 15. I offer 15 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Lu Ping pretended to have a pained expression. Even the scheming Chu Ting and Zhu Xianmeng couldn't help but praise Lu Ping for being so cunning. They knew that perfected Master Liang Xianfeng had given him more than 33,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Perfected Master Jean laughed and said, "If that's the case, I'll give up on this bowl of water. If I offer any more spiritual herbs, it won't be worth it." The other perfected master also said, "I'll give up on this bowl of water as well. I don't have as many spiritual herbs as Master Lu." Lu Ping knew that he was a grandmaster alchemist, so the 2 of them had to give him some face. After all, this was a spiritual item that could only be found by chance. If they were to get serious, even 23,000-year-old spiritual herbs would have to be carefully calculated. Lu Ping immediately said, "Thank you, seniors. I won't stand on ceremony." He then turned around and said, "I wonder if Fairy Sun can exchange 15 spiritual herbs for this bowl of water." Sure enough, Fairy Sun also smiled and said, 15 spiritual herbs might not be enough, but it's barely enough. I'll exchange this bowl of water with you, little brother." Lu Ping thanked her and handed a jade marrow box to Fairy Sunday. Fairy Sun opened it and nodded in satisfaction. Lu Ping carefully placed the bowl of water into his storage ring and let out a long sigh of relief. The trading fair continued, but this time, Lu Ping was also qualified to participate. However, none of the following transactions caught Lu Ping's attention. Zhu Xianmeng, on the other hand, used a top-grade instrument that looked like a musical instrument to exchange for a jade scroll that recorded a musical killing method from the same cultivator. In the blink of an eye, the first 20 or so cultivators had shown their items. It was perfected Master Liang Xuanfeng's turn to show his treasure. The cultivators in the quiet room naturally looked at one of the two ninth-layer core forging experts in the room. Lu Ping and the other two were also curious about what treasure perfected Master Liang Xianfeng would take out. Even the other ninth-layer core forging expert, Skyren's perfected Master Huang Tingjian, looked at perfected Master Liang Xianfeng with interest.